Thanks for the gift sub, King Sloth. Yep, very familiar, Papa. Sure, Johnny.
In early 1959, a group of hikers decided to head out on an expedition across a mountainous region of Western Soviet Union. The group consisted of 9 experienced men and women greatly familiar.
For the record, new information about Dyatlov has surfaced over the last few months.
Would prove to be their last. Despite a criminal investigation, photographs and journal entries, the case remains unsolved after more than half a century. This is the case of Dyatlov Pass.
Hey, thanks for the 5 gift subs, Spicy Meat. Fucking tier 3 and gift subs, man. Thank you. Thanks for the gift sub licked.
In the early morning of January the 23rd, 1959, a ski and hiking team of 10 boarded a train headed for the Ural Mountains in the middle of the Soviet Union. The group consisted of 8 men and 2 women,
hey, Big T's, hope you're doing well.
Dyatlov as the group's leader. As the train slowly advanced deep into the mountainous Siberian taiga, the group diary received a final entry. I wonder what awaits us on this hike. Will anything new happen?
Oh,
over the next few days, the group continued to alternate between modes of
transportation. Red Rockstar.
First a bus, then a truck, then a horse and sleigh, and eventually they proceed on foot and skis. On January the 28th, one of the hikers named Yuri Yudin had begun to feel quite ill and eventually decided to head back, while the remaining group of 9 continued as planned. These photos were taken just before they parted ways, and it would be the last time he saw his friends alive. The group resumed their expedition across the snow-covered outback and documented everything of note using diaries as well as multiple cameras. Recovered photos and journal entries suggest that the trek progressed as one would expect, with no unforeseen complications. Just lots of snow, bitter cold, and an increasingly arduous landscape. On February the 1st, they reached the foot of a mountain known to the indigenous Mansi population as Dead Mountain. They spend the better part of the day progressing up the slope and eventually decide to set up camp only a few hundred meters from the peak.
Thanks for 5 gift subs, Extinct.
These are some of the last photos recovered from the cameras, and the last sentence of the final entry reads, "It is difficult to imagine such a comfort on the ridge, with shrill, howling wind hundreds of kilometers away from human settlements."
This one shows bodies. Let me do a quick scan. I mean, I'm sure... Oh, yeah. There's a whole section called The Bodies. When we get to that chapter, I'll just go ahead and play it safe. I won't show that chapter. I'll just let you hear the audio.
A few weeks later, friends and relatives begin to worry. No one has heard from Igor or any of the other members of the group. After much debate, a team of volunteers eventually head out to find them. On February the 26th, the search party is finally able to locate the camp on the slope. It's obvious to the first at the scene that something has gone horribly wrong. The tent is in scrambles, covered by a thin coat of snow. The hikers' belongings and equipment was found orderly placed inside the tent, but the tent itself had been slashed open with a knife from the inside.
Oh.
The next day, 9 pairs of footprints lead the search volunteers down the slope towards the nearby woods. Given that the footprints left rather mild indentations in the snow, would suggest that they descended the slope in a rather calm and orderly fashion, as opposed to running away in panic. The footprints could be tracked for about half a kilometer from the tent until the trail was completely covered by snow. So they continued in the direction of the trail and under a large cedar tree at the edge of the forest, next to the remains of an improvised campfire, they found the frozen bodies.
Alright, let's just not take any chances.
Of Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonoshenko. It would take over 2 months for the bodies of all 9 hikers to be recovered. The first 2 were found severely underdressed. No jackets, no pants, no gloves, hats, boots or anything else one might expect given the frigid climate. only light shirts, underpants and socks. At the time of their death, it would have been around 30 degrees below zero. The cedar tree had signs of damage, as if someone had climbed it, with branches broken up to 5 meters high. Perhaps they were attempting to locate a tent in the pitch black
I know
darkness,
XQC watch that I saw. That's like one of the first things that comes up when you type in Dyatlov.
Or something. The next 3 hikers were found at varying distances between the tent and the tree, covered by a few centimeters of snow. They were better dressed than the previous 2, but not by much, as they still lacked essential items such as boots, hats, and gloves. They were all found facing the direction of the tent, as if they were struggling to return
it's for Twitch.
at the moment
I'm not
of
taking
death.
a chance.
While some of them had sustained minor injuries, all 5 had died of hypothermia. It should also be noted that 4 of them had died while intoxicated. The last 4 hikers were found at the bottom of a small hill, covered by 3 meters of snow, 75 meters from the tree.
Again, a lot has come out about this over the last few months from what I remember.
3 of them had sustained lethal injuries. 1 had a fractured skull, and 2 had fractured multiple ribs and suffered massive internal bleeding.
There's the prime squanch.
The medical examiner believed the injuries had been sustained from a fall and compared it to a car crash. The injuries had been sustained while they were all alive and could not have been inflicted by another person. 2 had also been found with gaping eye sockets, and 1 of the women had a missing tongue. The last of the 4 had a broken nose and a deformed neck, but died of hypothermia. The most mysterious of all, 3 articles of clothing were later found to be abnormally radioactive. On May the 28th, the criminal case was discontinued with a cryptic and incredibly vague conclusion.
Okay, I think that's
the lead investigator writes in the final report, "The cause of death was an unknown compelling force, which the hikers were unable..."
Check before I let it ride uninterrupted. Yeah, it seems to be the only time they show the bodies. Next is just campsites and stuff. Real quick though, again, I'm gonna double check, but I'm pretty sure there was a huge Dyatlov Pass breakthrough recently. Yeah. I remember it was kind of big on Reddit, so that was a couple months ago. Yeah, I believe, I won't spoil it. Well, this kind of spoils it. But yeah, you know.
To overcome. Not exactly the most satisfying answer and barely a conclusion at all. So, just in case the Galactic Empire had nothing to do with the death of the hikers, is it possible to explain some of the more enigmatic details in a less vague yet credible fashion? Let's give it a shot. The fact that Dubinina was missing her tongue has been taken way out of proportion. Some say that it was cut off or ripped out while she was still alive. Others say it was eaten by scavengers after death, while some even claim the tongue was later found somewhere else. But I've read the medical reports, and this is what it says. The diaphragm of the mouth and the tongue is missing. That's it. There's nothing about cutting or ripping or anything. I don't know how or where it began, but there seems to be an exaggerated importance placed on this missing tongue, while in reality, it's a rather minor detail. At least the medical examiner believed it to be a minor detail, otherwise he would likely have elaborated further. For example, the same section of the same report states, "Gaping orbits, the eyeballs are absent." Equally mysterious, right? Well, no, because the medical examiner does provide an explanation for both. Soft tissue injuries to the head are post-mortem changes to Dubinina's corpse, which was recently exposed to water prior to detection. He even adds putrefaction and decomposition in parentheses to clarify exactly what it means. And this was not even exclusive to Dubinina, as the 4 last bodies were all damaged due to the melting snow. Now, some claim that her tongue must have been removed while she was still alive. But can we really rule out Sasquatch? Pointed to the fact that she had about 100 grams of blood in her stomach. But that's not exactly true either. The relevant portion of the forensic examination reads, "The stomach contained up to 100 cubic centimeters of a dark red, slimy mass." That's about 10 centiliters of something, most likely food, mixed with something red, most likely blood. So we don't know how much blood was in her stomach, just that there was blood in her stomach. Which isn't that strange, given that she was suffering from massive internal bleeding. One of the most mysterious aspects of this case is that 3 separate articles of clothing discovered on 2 of the bodies were found to be radioactive, which does indeed sound a bit mysterious, but you have to keep in mind that almost everything is slightly radioactive. So we need more details.
True.
The radiological studies claim that under normal circumstances, an area of 150 square centimeters should not exceed 5,000 disintegrations.
Everything is radioactive, literally everything.
Only 3 articles of clothing exceeded or equaled that limit at 5,000
They
DPM,
were fucking nuked. Yeah, that's probably what it was.
And 9,900 DPM. The only explanation given in the report is that the clothes were contaminated as radioactive dust fell from the atmosphere, or the clothes were susceptible to contamination when in contact with radioactive substances. In other words, they were unable to determine exactly how the clothes were contaminated, but it's not unrealistic to believe it to be a result of natural processes.
Not really, before we made nukes, FYI.
It wasn't due to the elements. There may
Bro,
be
you're just outright wrong. Wait, what?
Kolevatov had previously worked at a facility
You think
developing
nukes made
nuclear
radiation?
materials, and Krivonoshenko had previously worked at a top-secret plutonium production plant for nuclear weapons, and the 3 articles of radioactive clothing belonged to Kolevatov and Krivonoshenko. Around the time of the hiker's disappearance, numerous sources claim to have seen UFOs in the form of orbs of light moving across the night sky for a few seconds up to several minutes. These include 3 soldiers and 2 different hiking groups. Some witnesses also claim that the indigenous Mansi population, as well as a group of geologists, had told them that they had observed fireballs in the sky around the time of the incident. The problem with UFO sightings is that they are, well, unidentified and often unverifiable as a result.
Which means they have to be true.
One of the hiking groups reported to have seen the UFO during the night of the incident, while the other sightings occurred before or after. Then there's this. This is the very last photo taken with one of the hiker's cameras. It appears to be a photo of some type of light source taken in the middle of the night.
What if it actually is aliens?
The photo is about as undescriptive as the UFO it is claimed to depict. It could no doubt be a photo of a UFO, and it could no doubt be a photo of a candle, flashlight, fire, stove, or anything else. But let's assume that it is a photo of something in the night sky. What could it potentially be depicting? I can think of a few possibilities. A rocket, a piece of a rocket, man-made space debris during re-entry, a crashing aircraft, or perhaps a meteor. None of which would be too surprising given that this is the Soviet Union in the middle of the Cold War as well as the space race, so there would have been a lot of aerial activity. At the time when space exploration was about as fresh as a prince living in an affluent LA neighborhood, it's not surprising that people were unable to identify the mysterious lights. Regardless, it could not have landed close to the hikers as it would have been found by the search teams. And if the object had already been recovered...
Why do you keep fucking spamming this? Last story was Nightblood. Valentina had Nightblood and she didn't die from radiation. What the fuck is Nightblood? What the fuck are you talking about? Is it like a CW show or something? What is Nightblood? You've been spamming that for almost 40 minutes now since we finished that. And Valentina never died. It's actually fanfic. You have been spamming about fanfic. Is this your fanfic? Well, that was a good waste of time.
Could have been evidence in the form of a crash site, footprints, and other activity on the ground. So, given the fact that there is no obvious connection between the UFO and the hiker's disappearance, I put this in the spooky red herring box. So, what happened? Why did they leave the tent? Why was it slashed open from the inside? How did some of them sustain such major injuries while the others simply succumbed to the cold? Why were so many of them underdressed?
Avalanche.
I think the biggest mystery is how it's been able to remain a mystery given the abundance of information. So after spending the better part of this month hiring multiple Russian translators reading through a massive amount of material ranging from theories about a KGB cover-up to a simple avalanche accident, this is what I believe to be the most credible.
Let's see if he gets it right, because there is an explanation now.
First of all, why would they leave the tent? That seems to be the most important missing piece of the puzzle. I would argue that the only thing that could make them leave would have to be an immediate threat inside the tent. If something was outside, such as an animal or a UFO, then there would be no reason to cut the tent open. There were no signs of an avalanche, however, they could have escaped believing an avalanche was tumbling towards them. The problem with that theory is that the footprints show them walking in a calm and orderly manner down the slope, as opposed to running away in panic. So something caused them to panic inside the tent, but once outside, they calmed down and made a conscious decision to walk down the slope. Now, take a look at this photo. The pipe sticking out of the tent entrance is the exhaust pipe of the internal stove. This was a completely unique and homemade design, as the leader of the group had built the stove himself. We know they had used the stove on the night of the incident before the incident took place, as partially eaten pieces of fried ham and bacon were found inside the tent. I think that after disassembling the stove and removing the exhaust pipe, the embers inside the stove were accidentally reignited. As the exhaust pipe had been removed, the smoke would have filled the tent in seconds. As they attempted to get control of the flame, they cut a few holes at the top of the tent to vent the smoke.
Damn, this guy's
when
a
that
genius.
didn't work and it became increasingly difficult to breathe, the side of the tent was slashed open and they all escaped in a state of panic. There's even more evidence to support this theory. Several members of the group were found with burn marks on both their bodies and
just in case they show bodies, not gonna risk it.
Which could definitely have been a result of the improvised fire under the tree, or perhaps a scalding hot metal stove. Some of them were also found with blood around their mouth, and coughing up blood could be a symptom of smoke inhalation. Then there's this photo, taken the day before the incident. The jacket has obviously been burned, but the question is how? It's possible that sparks from the stove had accidentally set the jacket aflame. Okay, so they make it outside and quickly realize what a terrible situation they're in. Sub-zero temperatures, no shelter, underdressed, in the middle of a snowstorm, in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere. At this point, I think one or more of them made a decision to head for the nearest shelter, which they would have known to be the woods. The reasoning behind this decision is likely multifaceted. The smoke from the tent could have made it impossible to stay within its proximity, and/or the smoke may have caused them to believe that the tent was on fire. Some of them were intoxicated, which could have affected their judgment as well as their sensibility to the cold. And they may also have believed to be closer to the woods than they actually were. So they finally reached the woods and immediately set out to make a fire. Some climbed a tree and scavenged the surrounding area, while those who are more properly dressed head a bit deeper into the woods. About 75 meters from the tree, 4 of them trigger a minor avalanche, taking them over the edge of a ravine with a drop of about 3 meters. As the bottom is filled with rocks and ice, they sustain lethal injuries. 3 of the other 5 hikers decide to head back for the tent, while the remaining 2 slowly freeze to death around a fading flame.
So, that theory makes a ton of sense, and I haven't kept up with the Dyatlov discoveries here, but like I said, I remembered recently there was a huge resurgence in information and explanations for this, so let me just check to make sure there's no pictures of bodies. I just ripped some good ass in case you heard that. Okay, this looks good. So this comes from Smithsonian Mag. Thanks to the resub raw. Can't say I've done that before, dried pickle. Next to the resub bravo. Alright, let's see. This is just an overview. Oh, here we go. An abominable snowman attack. That seems like a cool theory. We do not claim to have solved the Dyatlov past mystery, as no one survived to tell the story. That's just what a man who solved the mystery would say, being very coy. But we show the plausibility of the Avalanche hypothesis. An avalanche, a snow slab, or a hurricane. Thanks to Tier 1 Zion and Prime Huso. Official findings suggested a torrent of snow slabs or blocky chunks surprised the sleeping victims and pushed them to seek shelter at a nearby ridge. Unable to see more than 50 feet ahead, the hikers froze to death as they attempted to make their way back to their tent. Critics of the slab avalanche theory cite four main counter-arguments: the lack of physical traces of an avalanche, more than 9-hour gap between the hikers building their camp, a process that required cutting into the mountain to form a barrier against the wind, and their panicked departure, the shallow slope of the campsite, and the traumatic injuries sustained by the group. Asphyxiation is more common cause of death for avalanche victims. Okay. So this guy proved that a snow slab could have wiped through the area without leaving many traces. A slab avalanche, excuse me. Alright. Jesus, they really went in on this. Got a whole little fucking graph. Well, not graph, a whole little picture. Researchers unraveled the final piece of the puzzle, the hikers' unexplained injuries, with the help of a surprising source, Disney's 2013 film Frozen. I'm starting to doubt how accurate this conclusion may be. If Elsa did it, but I'll continue. He was so impressed by the movie's depiction of snow that he asked his creators to share their animation code with him. This simulation tool, coupled with data from cadaver tests conducted by General Motors in 1970 to determine what would happen to the human body when struck at different speeds, enabled the pair to show that heavy blocks of solid snow could have landed on the hikers as they slept, crushing their bones and causing injuries not typically associated with avalanches. If this was the case, the pair posits those who had sustained less serious blows likely dragged their injured companions out of the tent in the hopes of saving their lives. Okay. Thanks for the resub remark. The slabs of snow would have had to be incredibly stiff and moving at a significant speed to inflict such violent injuries. He adds that the research doesn't explain why these people, after being hit by an avalanche, ran off without their clothes into the snow. True. If you're in that type of harsh environment, it's suicide to leave shelter without your clothes on. True. For people to do that, they must have been terrified by something, and I assume one of the most likely things is one of them went crazy for some reason. Can't understand why else they would have behaved in that way unless they were trying to flee from someone who's been tracking them. I mean, yeah, I guess that really wasn't as conclusive as I thought it would be. Thanks to Prime Darko and Resub Prime. Oh, DB Cooper. Yes, I didn't even think of that. Maybe it was DB Cooper. Don't know if I've seen the one yet either, R. To be honest, Lamino's theory actually sounds more plausible. This, I'm doubting that one now. Let me just double check there's no bodies here. Now I'm interested. Yeah, no bodies. Is it not just hypothermic psychosis? Well, no, because it all happened while they were in their tents warm, supposedly. They cut out of the tent and all took off into the night. They wouldn't be suffering from hypothermia inside with a stove and clothing and everything. That really wouldn't add up. Oh no, this one also talks about slab avalanche. And it also cites Frozen. Yeah, I don't know. Who knows? That is very interesting. Very interesting indeed.
I'm built differently, I'm built differently, I'm built differently, I'm built differently.
Just let me know.
I haven't seen Lamino's video on it, I just meant I remember the event. Did they solve it? No. Lisa gives a bill. No. Yeah, I mean, I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure it's still unsolved. They just have a working theory. Yeah, no, it's still not solved. It's just working theories. Lisa said, Punk Chicken, the 5 gift subs sweat. Thank you, man.
Delivery manager.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sweat. Thank you for a long time of watching, Handyman.
Malaysia 370, standby.
At Kuala Lumpur International Airport, a Boeing 777 is preparing for departure.
Malaysia 370, request level. 370, we are ready, requesting flight level 350 to Beijing.
The
Malaysian
unidentifiable.
Airlines
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Flight 370 is a daily passenger flight between Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia and Beijing, China.
370, 32 right of takeoff. Nice.
42 minutes past midnight, Flight 370 is given clearance to depart. On board are Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid, 10 cabin crew members, and 227 passengers.
Was this plane ever found? I don't know. I don't know.
Malaysian 370, Lumpur, radar, good morning, climb flight level 250. Morning, level 250, Malaysian 370. Malaysian 370, climb flight level 350. Level 350, Malaysian 370.
Less than an hour into the flight, the plane is cruising over the South China Sea at an altitude of 35,000 feet. The night sky is clear, and the weather
They
is
found
calm.
pieces, but not the whole
Flight
thing.
370 is then instructed to signal air traffic control in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam, as it is about to enter Vietnamese airspace. The flight controller in Kuala Lumpur says goodnight, with no sign that anything should be amiss.
Malaysian 370, maintaining level 350. Malaysian 370. Malaysian 370, maintaining level 350. Malaysian 370. Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night. Good night, Malaysian 370.
Thanks, 3 sub acid redemption. Yeah, I know
1
Jeremy
minute
do it.
And 43 seconds later, the aircraft suddenly vanish from radar screens at Kuala Lumpur, Ho Chi Minh, and Bangkok.
What?
This form of positional tracking depends on a signal being
quickly?
emitted by one of 2 transponders aboard a plane, and so its disappearance would suggest both transponders ceased to function, or the system was manually deactivated by someone on board. All subsequent attempts to contact and ascertain the whereabouts of Flight 370 are unsuccessful. the aircraft has seemingly vanished without a trace. After missing its scheduled time of arrival in Beijing some 4 hours later, Flight 370 is officially declared missing. And in the wake of that announcement, the most expensive search effort in aviation history is about to commence.
And then I remember like a year after this, Malaysian Airlines also had another plane go missing or another accident, I don't recall. But that one was really fucking eerie because one of the passengers had tweeted, "Here's my flight if it goes missing," and then it actually fucking did.
Of the flight's disappearance between the South China Sea and the Gulf of Thailand. The search area was soon expanded, however, after the Malaysian military disclosed additional information. Unlike the radar system employed by air traffic control, long-range military radar does not rely on transponders but use reflectance to track the position
Just done work with them
A
through
review
the
of the
company and
data
then became
collected by the
friends.
Malaysian military revealed that moments after contact with Flight 370 was lost, the aircraft had deviated from its scheduled flight path with a subtle turn to the right,
Yeah, you just haven't
followed
found
by a
it scary.
prolonged turn to the left. The aircraft had then flown back towards and across the Malaysian peninsula before turning right near the island of Penang. It maintained this northwesterly heading until it escaped the radar's coverage. Over the next few days, the Strait of Malacca, the Andaman Sea, and the Bay of Bengal was scoured by a multinational fleet of aircraft and vessels, but there was no trace of Flight 370. Meanwhile, investigators began to analyze the aircraft's satellite communication records.
What the fuck?
Like all modern airliners, Flight 370 was equipped with a satellite communications terminal, or SATCOM, to send and receive transmissions to and from the ground. Prior to departure, the SATCOM terminal had logged onto the satellite network and established a connection with a ground station in Perth, Australia. That station then maintained a detailed record of all the incoming and outgoing traffic between it and Flight 370. This is what it contained. Prior to the flight's disappearance over the South China Sea, everything appeared to be working as intended. Then, at some point during this portion of the flight, the SATCOM link was severed.
What happened? Did they see like a fucking dragon in the sky and just like get the fuck away from it?
3 minutes after the
Jesus
flight
Christ.
vanished over the Andaman Sea, the terminal requested to log back onto the network. The SATCOM link was successfully re-established and was not disrupted again until nearly 6 hours later, when the flight is presumed to have crashed due to fuel exhaustion. During these final hours, 2 attempts were made to contact the plane via satellite telephone. Both calls were acknowledged by the SATCOM terminal and would have been routed to the cockpit. Yet, they went unanswered. The terminal had also responded to 5 automatic status requests. In short, if the ground station had not heard from the aircraft in over an hour, it would transmit a signal to confirm the terminal was still online.
It's a real story.
While these transmissions did not contain any information about the flight's position, investigators were able to measure the distance between the satellite and the aircraft at the time of each transmission, based on how long it took those transmissions to be sent and received. This generated 7 rings of possible locations from which 7 of these transmissions are thought to have originated. By taking fuel consumption, speed, and other factors into account, flight path analysis indicated the most probable origin of the final transmission to be somewhere along this arc in the southern Indian Ocean. The search effort shifted accordingly, and as the region fell within the jurisdiction of Australia, the Australian government took charge of the operation. Over the next few weeks, the search area was progressively refined to account for oceanic drift as well as improved estimations of the flight path. But this part of the southern Indian Ocean is so remote it took 6 days just to get there. A new fleet of aircraft and vessels gradually covered more than 4.5 million square kilometers of ocean, but Flight 370 was nowhere to be found. If the impact with the ocean had been sufficiently forceful, it was possible the resulting sound had been recorded by underwater listening devices known as hydrophones. This possibility was investigated, and 4 hydroacoustic monitoring stations had recorded something.
It is crazy how much shit there is, like, already in the world. Like, if it crashes in the middle of nowhere, luckily we still have these robo-lizards that we have just for monitoring. Might be picked up by one of those.
While the timing and direction of the sound were reasonably consistent with the final satellite transmission, the estimated origin was not. The sound was in all likelihood caused by nothing more than geological activity. Flight 370 was also equipped with 2 underwater locator beacons which had a battery
Tier
life
1
of
out of
some
control.
40 days. And as the deadline approached in early
dank.
April, signals with a pulse and frequency
danky.
somewhat similar to the signal emitted by the beacons were detected at depths of up to 3,000 meters. An autonomous submersible then spent weeks scanning the seafloor where the signals had been detected, but no wreckage was ever found. And nothing would be found until more than 16 months later, when a discovery was made on the opposite side of the Indian Ocean. On the 29th of July 2015, a group of people were cleaning up a beach in Reunion, a small island to the east of Madagascar, when they stumbled upon this 2-meter-long metallic object covered in barnacles. Aviation experts quickly
barnacles look
identified
like?
the object as a section of an aircraft.
I guess I've never seen a
object.
barnacle. Looks like it's fucking growing almonds. Or like little sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds or something. Damn, barnacles are fucking weird.
Covered in barnacles. Aviation experts quickly identified the object as a section of an aircraft wing known as a
Revel
flaperon.
and
Upon
Asen.
closer inspection, internal markings including dates and serial numbers conclusively ascertained the flaperon belonged to Flight 370. Even though Reunion Island is some 4,000 kilometers west of the search area, and more than a year had gone by since the flight disappeared, the location was consistent with simulations of debris dispersal patterns. There was now tangible evidence that Flight 370 had crashed somewhere in the Indian Ocean. The discovery of the flaperon prompted numerous searches along beaches and shorelines of southeastern Africa, and at least 31 additional items of interest have since been recovered and examined. Some of these items include a section of the outboard flap from the right wing, a piece of cowling from one of the 2 engines, a partial door from the nose landing gear, a section of the vertical stabilizer.
I fucking
and a
hate
mangled
airplanes,
casing
man.
From one of the embedded headrests.
This is why I don't fly. This shit is terrifying.
18 of these items were identified as either likely, highly likely, or almost certain to have originated from Flight 370, whereas only 3 could be confirmed. The remaining 11 could not be identified. There were no traces of an explosion found on any of the debris tested, nor was there any evidence of a fire except for 3 small burn marks on one of the unidentifiable items. The search for debris was further aided by Earth observation satellites. Analyses of satellite imagery from March of 2014 uncovered a number of images which appeared to feature man-made objects floating on or just below the surface in the southern Indian Ocean. However, the images were not nearly sharp enough to resolve any identifiable markings, and multiple searches notwithstanding, this debris was never recovered. A satellite image taken mere hours after the final transmission also captured what appeared to be a contrail some distance away from the search area. A later analysis, however, concluded it was most likely a shadow from a somewhat linear cloud formation. The underwater portion of the search continued for months and eventually years before it was finally suspended in early 2017, by which point
they gave up.
120,000 square kilometers of seabed had been scrutinized. The search effort was then resumed by an American salvage company known as Ocean Infinity, but after more than a year of searching,
Well, how would
too
they have done
came
that,
up
Ryan?
empty-handed. Unless the final resting place of Flight 370 can be located, it may be impossible to determine exactly why it crashed. Nevertheless, there have been no shortage of theories. On the day of the disappearance, 2 of the passengers raised suspicion as they had boarded the flight with stolen passports, which immediately prompted concerns of a hijacking. But investigators were unable to link the 2 men to any terrorist organizations, and soon determined they had traveled under false identities because they were seeking asylum, not due to any nefarious intent.
Yeah, like hijacking wouldn't make any sense. They didn't make any
Passengers
demands.
were identified as a flight engineer who might have possessed the necessary expertise to take control of a Boeing 777. Apart from the 239 persons on board, Flight 370 carried nearly 11 metric tons of cargo. Among the items listed on the flight manifest was a shipment of lithium-ion batteries, which led some to suspect a fire might have broken out mid-flight. For instance, the crash of
Why do we
UPS
still
Airlines
use lithium
Flight 6
batteries?
in September of 2010
Nothing good
was
comes
the
from that
result
shit.
of a fire that was ignited by a pallet of lithium-ion batteries. Another potential source of ignition would be an electrical malfunction. The crash of Swiss Air Flight 111 in September of 1998 is thought to have been caused by a fire within the electrical wiring above
My
the
phone
cockpit.
doesn't use lithium-ion batteries, ion batteries. It's an iPhone.
Including the
It uses children's tears to power it.
In the case of Flight 370, the sudden loss of communication and subsequent deviation from a scheduled flight path might have been a direct response to a fire. The two pilots may have turned back towards Malaysia to attempt an emergency landing at the nearest suitable airport. But no such attempt was ever made. Instead, Flight 370 kept going and remained aloft for another 6 hours. Some have theorized the crew might have been incapacitated by a sudden or gradual loss of cabin pressure. For instance, when Helios Airways Flight 522 failed to pressurize in August of 2005, the pilots quickly fell unconscious. Yet the aircraft continued to fly on autopilot for more than 2 hours until it ran out of fuel. Airline pilots are of course trained for such an event.
Wait, what
in the event of cabin depressurization, fell unconscious.
Wait, did it crash or did it land itself? What the fuck? We have the capability for the plane to just completely fly itself on the pattern? I thought you still needed the pilot present to guide it. I thought it was just kind of like activating cruise control in your car. Hold on a second. Did it crash or did it like just have a successful landing all autonomously? Oh, it crashed. Oh, fuck. So it didn't pressurize and everyone was incapacitated. Holy shit. Oh, did he say it crashed? Oh, I just looked at this. I didn't even notice it said crashed. Oh, that'll do it. Thanks to the resub, Erotic and J. Cuddy.
Yet the aircraft continued to fly on autopilot for more than 2 hours until it ran out of fuel. Airline pilots are of course trained for such an event. In the event of cabin depressurization, an automatic system is designed to deploy oxygen masks to give the pilots enough time to perform an emergency descent to a more breathable altitude. The data recorded by the Malaysian military radar does indeed contain altitude information, but it is highly inconsistent. In fact, the Boeing 777 is incapable of performing the extreme altitude fluctuations recorded. At one point, the aircraft exceeded its maximum operating altitude by more than 15,000 feet before making a 50,000 feet nosedive in less than a minute. Attempts to recreate these maneuvers on a flight simulator were unsuccessful, and thus the data was deemed inaccurate and unreliable. If Flight 370 did lose cabin pressure at 35,000 feet, and the pilots were incapacitated before descending to a more oxygenated altitude, it might explain why the aircraft remained aloft for as long as it did. What is a bit more difficult to explain, however, are these alterations in heading. Flight simulations have established the aircraft must have been under manual control during the initial left turn, as the bank angle or inclination of that turn was beyond the limits of the autopilot. Subsequent turns, however, could have been either manual or automatic. But for the autopilot to have made these course corrections, someone with the requisite knowledge must have programmed it to do so. The only other alternative is that the aircraft was in fact under manual control.
Thanks for the bits, Beef, and hello there. Yeah, I was talking about it the other day, hello there. I still haven't caught up on all of it, but yeah, it's a pretty fucked situation.
In late June of 2014, several news outlets reported that a special investigation had identified the captain of Flight 370 as a prime suspect. A search of the captain's home had uncovered a flight simulator which supposedly contained a suspicious route which ended in the southern Indian Ocean. At the time, there was no official acknowledgement that such a route had been recovered, and a lengthy public report issued by the Malaysian government in 2015 made no mention of such a discovery. Then, in 2016, confidential documents pertaining to a forensic examination conducted by the Royal Malaysia Police in May of 2014 was leaked to the media. These documents made it clear that such a route had not only been recovered, but thoroughly examined. Soon thereafter, the Malaysian government confirmed the existence of this simulated flight path, and this is what it looks like. It should come as no surprise that many regard this as damning evidence of premeditation, but according to investigators, it is not quite so evident. The data recovered consists of 7 coordinates, 2 in Kuala Lumpur, 2 in the Strait of Malacca,
What was he planning to do? Drive it straight to fucking Antarctica?
and 2 in the southern Indian Ocean. The data was reconstructed from a file that had been automatically generated and saved by the simulation software a month before the incident. However, it's not clear whether the coordinates originate from the same flight session.
Oh,
In other
murder,
words, it might
suicide,
not be
I guess,
correct to
maybe.
simply trace a continuous line between these 7 coordinates, as they could be from separate sessions. The forensic examination by the Royal Malaysia Police simply concluded no activity captured conclusively indicate any kind of premeditated act pertaining to the incident of MH370.
He's a bit sweeper.
Even
in
so, the
resub rat king.
similarities between the simulated route and the presumed route of
Because of
Flight
shit like this,
370
Seabay, I don't know,
directly
it's scary.
influenced the search operation. Australian investigators consider the possibility of someone deliberately extending the range of the flight by gliding the aircraft off the fuel exhaustion. If so, the plane could have traveled an additional 200 kilometers. Alternatively, the range could have been reduced by a controlled ditching prior to fuel exhaustion. While ultimately deemed unlikely, these 2 scenarios did affect the search effort. If the captain steered Flight 370 off course with the intention of crashing in a remote part of the southern Indian Ocean, his motive is an even greater mystery. Sahari Ahmad Shah was 53 and married with 3 children. He had more than 18,000 hours of flight experience and a spotless track record. Investigators found no evidence of financial issues, and his monthly expenses before the disappearance indicated nothing unusual. He had no history of mental illness, nor had he displayed any
These are tier
recent
1
changes in
FFCC.
lifestyle or behavior. He was raised on the island of Penang, which has led some to speculate the flight's second turn to the southwest of Penang was the captain getting a final view of his hometown. Some believe a hijacking could have been politically motivated, as Sahari was an avid supporter of a democratic opposition leader who was sentenced to 5 years in prison mere hours before Flight 370 took off. Others point to unconfirmed reports of marital issues, but this is contradicted by the official investigation and disputed by family members. The only real inconsistency
cool.
noted by the
Can look that
final
up.
report is
Harrison?
that the captain failed to repeat the assigned radio frequency during the last verbal communication.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night. Good night, Malaysian 370.
It would have been standard procedure to repeat the assigned frequency, as the captain had correctly done a few minutes prior.
370, contact Lampur radar 1326, good night.
Alright, 1326 Malaysian 370.
Whether this omission is
This is tier 1
indicative of
Hubstert.
anything but a mistake is anyone's best guess.
Yeah, I don't think that means
By
shit.
all accounts, Captain Sahari was an affable and well-respected pilot who was passionate about aviation, as evident by the photos and videos he shared on social media.
Hi everyone, this is a YouTube video that I made.
Oh, that's kinda
it's a
cute.
Community service after learning.
The co-pilot was found to be even less conspicuous. Farik Abdul Hamid was only 27 and due to marry a fellow pilot. He had nearly 3,000 hours of flight experience, although only 39 hours in this type of aircraft. Much like Sahari,
prime
Farik
range.
had no financial, mental or interpersonal issues of note, nor was there any evidence of conflict between the 2 of them. Some questioned the plausibility of a pilot-instigated hijacking due to the apparent lack of interference by the other pilot. Well, when Ethiopian Airlines Flight 702 was hijacked by the co-pilot in February of 2014, he did so by merely waiting for the captain to take a bathroom break before locking the cockpit door behind him. The co-pilot was then free to divert the Italy-bound flight to Switzerland to seek asylum. The only
I don't remember that
noteworthy
at
piece
all.
of evidence in regards to the co-pilot of Flight
He's a prime
370
doggo.
is
And
his
gifts of-
phone.
2 gifts
You
of
see, when the
diametric.
confidential documents were leaked, they also confirmed another long-circulated
That sounds
rumor,
cool, conveyor.
namely that a cell phone tower had briefly established a connection with an iPhone 5S belonging to the co-pilot as Flight 370 approached the island of Penang. According to investigators, it was not a phone call as has been widely reported by the media, but merely an automatic location signal. Why this information was omitted from public reports, we may never know. So what is one to make of all of this? On the one hand, the simulated flight path seems suspicious. On the other, it is difficult to cast any substantial doubt on either of the two pilots' characters.
Yeah, I mean, the dude
It
seems
is equally
nice. Like, I don't
difficult
think
to
it was
deny a hijacking is
on
consistent
purpose.
with the available evidence. Then again, we're missing some quite major and literal pieces of evidence. The final report issued by the Malaysian government in 2018 could not attribute the loss of communication nor diversion of Flight 370 to a malfunction. Instead,
Thanks to
it is
Tier 1
believed that someone
Afghan.
manually manipulated the aircraft and its systems. For instance, investigators believe SATCOM was manually disabled by a sudden and
Oh,
prolonged
Jesus
interruption of power. Then, once power was restored, the terminal simply rebooted. Likewise, the alterations in heading are believed to be the result of manual inputs. With that being said, the uncertainty of these findings are repeatedly emphasized due to the limited evidence available, and the report does never explicitly state the flight was hijacked. In fact, no real conclusion is reached. Both the Malaysian and Australian government agree that Flight 370 crashed in the southern Indian Ocean, but that the cause is indeterminable without the wreckage, the location of which has managed to elude some of the foremost aviation experts in the world, as well as an impressive arsenal of cutting-edge technology for more than half a decade. Authors, aviation experts, and independent investigators have all chimed in to offer their own thoughts and theories as to the nature of the crash and the location of the wreckage. Some believe there was no crash, but that the aircraft was shot down by an American naval base in the middle of the Indian Ocean. The satellite transmissions were then supposedly
That wouldn't
forged
make any sense,
as part of
though.
a massive cover-up.
Wouldn't explain
Others
this.
believe the aircraft turned right towards India and traveled as far north as Kazakhstan, completely undetected. Debris was then supposedly planted along shorelines of southeastern Africa as part of a massive cover-up.
That makes sense, I guess.
Another theory suggests the aircraft was remotely hijacked and controlled by someone on the ground.
Thanks to the Prime
While
Break.
Boeing and other companies have experimented with technology that would allow for an aircraft to be remotely controlled, no commercial airliner is known to be outfitted with such a system. On the less conspiratorial side, the assumption that Flight 370 flew in a straight line and at a constant speed after turning left towards the southern Indian Ocean might simply be incorrect. In early 2018, a French team of independent investigators proposed an alternate flight path, whereby an attempted landing on Christmas Island led to a crash site much further north than the region identified by the
Christmas
official
Island,
investigation.
huh?
While a surface search of this area was conducted about a week after the disappearance,
What are the odds?
the underwater phase never reached this far north.
Thanks to the resub, Jimmy.
As of the making of this video, the search operation
I have
has
no
been
idea when
suspended, but there have been talks of potentially resuming the search. For now, it seems, the vanishing of Flight 370 will remain a mystery.
I had no idea it was that deep. From what I remember, I thought it was just pretty well understood that it crashed. And I thought it was just like a straight line and then something happened, they didn't know what. I had no idea there was this whole like turn, all this shit. I had no clue. That is so fucking weird. So the first turn had to be manual. They had to manually turn off the systems like shit. Why do people keep saying shot down? That wouldn't make any sense. That doesn't explain this at all. And also why the systems would be turned off. It was shot down by 5G towers. Yeah, maybe that makes more sense. Thanks for the gift sub, Skittle, and the resub, Jimmy. What an interesting fucking mystery, man. Yeah, I fucking hate planes. If even one plane malfunctions and crashes, I'm never going on one. It's fucking horrifying. I wish we could just have some sci-fi shit, or it's just a giant portal that rips through space-time continuum, so that way you don't have to be, like, reatomized. You just, like in Jumper, you know? Or not Jumper. Doctor Strange. You just open this giant thing and you see the other side and you just step right through. Simple and easy.
I'm built differently. I'm built differently. I'm built differently. Yeah, I'm built differently.
This.
Since pilots couldn't see out of the plane because of angled landing, engineers put together a solution.
The Concorde featured a droop snoot.
Droop snoot?
Yeah, the snoot would droop.
The snoot drooped.
Solid. That will do it.
I'm gonna try to smoke my own weight in weed eventually.
Holy shit.
There's only time in front of me, and I've already done 4.2 pounds. I can do it.
What a goal. Wow.
Hi, I'm Tony Greenhand.
Hey, Tony.
26, and I'm a professional joint roller.
The National Joint League. Holy fuck, the NJL?
Basically jump
That's
out of
huge.
bed and start rolling joints too. I make coffee and I start rolling, and while my coffee's being made, I'm like, boom, let's do it.
Tony
Before I got
truly
into
is
joint rolling,
an
I was growing
artist.
weed. It was pretty basic. I also bred cannabis, but just on the side. I'm known more for the joints now, which is a surprise to me.
Oh, wow, what the fuck? Tony's good. They should sell his joints right next to like Banksy's work.
My mom
and
was
Jackson
a
Pollock.
clerical at a police department, so she absolutely hates what I do.
It's kind of
You
like
see that I'm
balloon
making
animals for
sleeves
adults.
Here, and then I'll fill the sleeves instead of rolling these, and that's because I want this to be 100% perfect. Since it's gonna be the barrel of the gun, I need it to be straight all the way across.
That's pretty cool, actually. What the fuck?
He's got a private jet, and he's coming to pick it up.
So people are paying $7 for like a artistic joint? What a good deal. I mean, Tony seems like a good guy. I mean, he just loves to roll joints, I guess. I mean, they were pretty cool. They were not lame like I was expecting. Oh my fucking god, I know this. Oh shit. I remember this. This was like when I was still new to Reddit. Yeah, I remember this. This was solved. If I remember, I'll let the video play and then I'll go off memory and see if I'm right. Thanks to Tier 1 Guatemalan God. I did not know her name was Elisa Lam. It wasn't solved recently. It was solved pretty soon after this video aired. Was it real or she faked it? Bro, she fucking died. What do you mean? Did she fake it? That'd be the ultimate prank. What I remember most about this is this hit Reddit. It got really big on Reddit, and the Reddit detectives went hard. Like, they were going in on this video. I remember reading all kinds of theories. This was also around the time where Slender Man was still popular, so I saw a lot of Slender Man theories that she was trying to escape from him or some shit. Like, it got weird quick. Does it show how she died? No. So I'll just tell you what happens once the video ends, because the video is super weird. But what happens is she eventually was found in a water tank on the roof. She died. Yeah, so on top of this hotel, she was found in a water tank, drowned. And the explanation, if I remember correctly, this is all off memory. One of her friends came forward and said that they had actually done acid earlier that day, which explains all the weird hand movements and shit, and what must have happened is she just got real confused and then ended up wandering into the roof and fell into the water tank or some shit. I'm going off memory, so I don't know if that's right. So it had to do with stopping her medication. They said there was no evidence of trauma, assault, or suicide, so bipolar being a big factor. Yeah, it doesn't really give a very good explanation as to what happened, but it does solve a lot of the questions, like such as how she got on the roof, saying that it was easily accessible via fire escape and the tank lids were open. But it doesn't say how she closed the tank lid from the inside. Yeah, so it doesn't seem like it really has a good explanation. Yeah, it was open, but it was also closed when they found her, which means she would have had to have closed the lid from the inside, which is apparently not easy. Oh, it was open when they found her. Oh, what? Wait, didn't it just say ignoring the problem of how it was closed? What? Didn't I read that somewhere? Where did I just read that? Oh. Hotel employee found the body, said the lid was open at the time, removing the issue of how she could have closed the lid from the inside. Got it. Got it.
The Dyatlov Pass incident. A
Yeah,
case that
Dyatlov.
many consider to be one of the greatest mysteries of all time. As over 60 years later, there is no agreed upon conclusion to what exactly had happened
They give
to
some
those hikers.
whippers.
And part of what has always drawn me to this mystery is its uniqueness, as I always thought nothing like it could ever happen again. But little did I know, it already has. It was August 9th, 1993, as a group of Ukrainian kayakers paddled their way through a remote river in southern Siberia. The river tour would take them near the vast Khamar Daban mountain range and give them a full view of its beauty.
I
As
gotta
they
rip
followed
some
the
ass.
twisting river,
Ooh,
the group would
the
catch a
Charles
glimpse
White
of
ass
something
incident.
moving in the woods. It was a young lady wandering aimlessly with a frozen expression on her face. She was all alone with blood on her jacket.
Uh-oh.
The kayakers would call out to her, asking who she was and if she needed help, but the girl didn't answer. In fact, she didn't say a word. Whatever she had seen on that mountain range had traumatized her, to the point where
It's
she couldn't
Canadian
speak,
and
having barely
knock.
spoken of the incident
Thanks
to
a lot
this
for
day.
watching, man.
The kayakers would bring her back to civilization, where it would be discovered that her name was Valentina Yudachenko.
Hello,
a hiker
Valentina.
who had been visiting the area as part of a tourist expedition through the mountain range.
There's a good sub shack.
But the concerning part was, she wasn't alone. Or at least she hadn't been when she started her hike. In fact, she had been with 6 other hikers during her trip. Hikers who were nowhere to be found.
There's the
What
prime
happened in those
Bjorn.
mountains that was so
Bjorn.
traumatic that it left Valentina in a state of shock for years and caused the disappearance of her entire crew. Well, the story is as strange and disturbing as it gets. It all started on August 2nd, 1990.
Real quick, anyone that's seen this, is there anything TOS worrisome in here? They don't show any bodies or anything, right? I'm gonna assume not, but just want to cover bases. We good?
Khamar Daban. The group consisted of 24-year-old Tatiana Filipenko, 23-year-old Alexander Kresin, as well as Denis Shvachin, Victoria Zalasova, Tamar Babanov, and of course, Valentina Yudachenko, each of whom were merely teenagers.
There's a prime Tadax and
Despite
Loki.
their youth, they were all well-trained and
No worries,
experienced
Justin, thank you.
hikers, and the group was led by 41-year-old Ludmila Korovina, an internationally renowned master in pedestrian tourism. They were a well-prepared and run group, and the Khamar Daban Mountains were not viewed as being dangerous,
Thanks to Sub Alvinor.
especially in the middle of summer. Second,
23-year-old
2 other groups would
teenagers,
follow
yeah.
on nearby trails.
I don't know what to tell you.
One of which was even led by Ludmila's 16-year-old daughter, Natalia.
I
The
know
two
all
would
about
plan
that,
on
Jukes.
meeting up the very
I
next
talked about it
day
as well.
in the mountains along with their respective crews, before Ludmila and company would continue on towards Ludyanka, their final destination. However, the forecast couldn't have been more wrong.
I'll look into it later, Crone.
On and off spouts of freezing rain poured down upon the group and predicted an oncoming snowstorm as the group climbed the Kanulu mountain. And by August 4th, the snowstorm was in full effect, pummeling the exhausted hikers and forcing them to reroute and miss their connection with
Just get an
Natalia's group.
umbrella, nerds.
Drained of energy, Ludmilla would make the call to set up camp.
Who would take this photo? They look miserable.
For the night. A move that to this day is still questioned, as the hikers were merely half an hour away from a shelter that stood on top of that very mountain. The sun would rise the next day to more stormy weather, with the snow continuing to fall around them.
And Prime Bond.
Ludmilla knew that staying where they were would only spell trouble.
Yeah, I read about it, Dor.
So she ordered the group down the mountain and into the cover of the woods below. They'd never make it there. Just minutes into their descent, Alexander Christin would begin to stumble. The man considered to be the strongest of the group would fall to the ground as his mouth began to fill with foam. Blood would rush out of his ears and his nose as he laid there seizing violently in front of his group. The hikers stood there stunned. Christin was in perfect health, and just minutes ago he was fine. And now he laid in front of them, dying. They had been outside for mere minutes.
It's a haunted
Already
trail.
One of their crew members were down. The 5 hikers continued moving forward without their leader and their strongest member, trudging ahead in a state of shock and confusion. However, this descent wouldn't last long. As they walked out of sight of Ludmilla and their dying friend, screams started ringing out from on top of the hill. It was Ludmilla. They rushed back up to see what was the matter.
A bear.
Only to find a disturbing scene.
Alexander polar bear.
Was lying there, dead. And Ludmilla was dying too.
What?
Unable to move and on her last breath. To this day, it's still unclear what she died from, with reports saying that she had suffered from the same mysterious illness that Alexander seemed to have, while others say that it may have just been a heart attack.
They show a body. Well, it can't be one of theirs unless they just started taking photos. Here, let me just double check. Scanning through it right now, I don't see anything like that. All I'm doing is spoiling the fucking story. Also, early hypothesis, the lady that survived, Valentina, she killed them and made up the story. Like, this shit is making no sense right now.
But either way, chaos erupted from the group. Both Victoria and Tamar would quickly collapse on the ground, twitching violently and bleeding the same way that Christin had. They began tearing at their clothes, ripping them off and grabbing their necks as if they were being choked, all the whilst they desperately tried to gasp for air. Valentina rushed to help.
Sounds like something out of Dr. Stone, like they
in an instant,
went to like a poison well.
Would sink her teeth into Valentina, biting her and forcing her to back off.
What?
While this happened, Dennis started to run away from the group out of fear and confusion, having no idea what was happening to his friends or why. He could only watch as, one by one, they began to lose their minds.
Thanks again, Liam. Thanks to the resub Niners rule.
With Dennis hiding from the group, Tatiana also began to tear her warm clothing off, exposing her body to the freezing cold elements. She too grabbed for her throat and acted as if her own body was torturing her. Once on the ground, she would turn her attention to the rock that laid next to her, and in an instant she would begin to smash her head against it, over and over again, until her body would go limp. In a matter of
why do you keep saying hypothermia? In everything I've ever heard and learned about hypothermia, I've never heard about someone suffering from it, ripping their clothes off and turning into a zombie. Why do people keep saying hypothermia? Is there something I'm not understanding about it? 20 to 50% of hypothermia deaths are associated with paradoxical undressing. Oh, so this is real. This typically occurs during moderate or severe hypothermia as the person becomes disoriented, confused, and combative. Wow. They may begin discarding their clothing, which in turn increases the rate of heat loss. This is a real thing. I've never heard of this. In all of those, like, survival movies and shit, you never see the main character that's suffering from hypothermia getting naked and slamming his dick on a rock. This is interesting. Paradoxical undressing.
Succumbed to their mysterious symptoms. Dennis would emerge to help Valentina, as the two were the only ones left who hadn't faltered. However, their health was starting to wither as well. They remained in the forest, close to the site where their whole group had just died, unsure of what to do next.
Thanks, Risa Basling, and have fun, Naughty.
I can't imagine the silence
And yes, I've heard of that
confusion
Guatemalan.
they must have been experiencing.
And
As they
maybe
stood
we
there
were.
together after witnessing all their friends drop dead in front of them. Friends that a mere hour ago were in perfect health. And the stark fate wasn't quite finished with the group either, as a short time later, Dennis would collapse alongside Valentina, as he too began bleeding profusely, leaving Valentina as the only living member of the group. Completely traumatized and scared for her life, Valentina took supplies from the camp and proceeded to wander alone in the forest. She did so for 3 days before being found by the kayakers.
Oh, okay, never mind. Probably this is probably what you were talking about. So you're telling me, and we'll go back to the video in a second, but I have to skip the bodies. So you're telling me that Valentina somehow hiked for 3 more days after her entire group all got hypothermia at the same time? I feel like she'd be very close to it as well. Unless she just had, like, really warm clothing. I don't know. Judging by the video here, it'd be kind of hard to like hide this as a murder. So I fall back on my theory. I don't think it's right. I think I'm wrong.
A story that seemingly makes no sense. 6 healthy people turning insane and dropping dead in the matter of minutes.
Just play audio.
Which
fine.
prompts the...
I mean, there's not a lot here, but sure. It's in another language too, so. Thanks to the huge tier 3. Resub Gimji and
As they
Kukius.
received no guidance from the deeply traumatized Valentina. And what the rescue party saw when they stumbled upon the scene would shake them to their core. With one member saying it was a scary picture, the hikers were lying on a small ledge, some huddled together,
Oh wait,
some a little
I forgot
distance
these.
away. They had a story that seemingly makes no sense. 6 healthy people turning insane and dropping dead in the matter of minutes. Which prompts the
I didn't know it
all-important
came up twice.
question, what happened to
Still
those
blurred.
hikers?
It's fine.
A question that to this day remains without a true answer, where autopsy reports ruled that the 6 hikers had died of hypothermia and protein deficiency, pointing to the idea that the group had not been eating enough throughout their trip. But the more I look into this, the less I believe that this is possible.
What? Why?
Just looking over the symptoms, this cause of death does explain some of their behaviors, such as the paradoxical...
Hey, I just learned about that! Fuck
However,
yeah.
It fails to explain them all.
Makes a
The
prime
biting,
Truman and
the banging
Dodo.
of their heads against rocks, the foaming of the mouth, and the bleeding are all inconsistent with this conclusion. So how could hypothermia have set in so quickly?
Must have been
After
very
all,
cold.
It was summertime, and despite the snow, the temperature was likely barely below freezing. Also, if hypothermia were truly to blame, and they were in such bad shape that each hiker died in the span of minutes, then how could Valentina have continued
That's
to
what I
survive
said.
for 3 more days? It just doesn't make sense. And as for the protein deficiency, Valentina herself had mentioned that the group had eaten well throughout their trip, and had even ate together on the morning of their deaths. It's also worth noting that they ate as a group together, with each member eating the same thing. So how had Valentina survived if she had eaten what they had eaten? And has caused myself and many others to doubt this theory. But if it wasn't hypothermia and protein deficiency, then what could it have been? As is the case with most mysteries, some have blamed the supernatural.
Yeah, it was Bigfoot!
Otherworldly had happened to the group, while others have taken a more scientific stance, blaming things like low frequency in the area, which caused the group to go in a panic.
What?
But I have a hard time believing either of these, as the area was not all that remote, and it's well studied by scientists. Plus, this doesn't line up with Valentina's testimony, as well as the conditions of their bodies. Another possibility is that the group had eaten something poisonous on their trip, an idea that is certainly possible, as Ludmilla was often known to be a forager. So perhaps
Oh,
they picked
God.
some sort of fungus or
Jesus,
berry,
yeah.
giving it to the group to eat.
That's the
without
worst leader to
realizing
have.
that it was actually toxic. A poisonous mushroom could certainly cause the hikers to hallucinate and potentially bleed internally. But the issue is, Valentina never mentioned that the group had foraged for food.
Well,
And
ask
she is
her.
on record saying that they had eaten well. If they had ate something suspicious out there, she certainly would have told authorities.
Needs to give
Plus,
some
if they had
Archer
all
in the
eaten
Prime Bell.
together, then how had Valentina not been poisoned? And finally, Ludmilla was an expert at this kind of stuff, so it's unlikely that she would
Done.
make a mistake of this magnitude, especially given how well she knew the area. But if it hadn't been the food that had poisoned them, then perhaps it was something in the air.
Chemtrails.
Russia has long since been known for their development of deadly chemical weapons, producing them in secret and testing them in undisclosed locations. And around this time, it's documented that
Thanks,
they
Risa
had
Wheeler.
a specific interest in
Yeah, we can
deadly
do that
nerve
next.
agents, chemicals
Thanks,
that
Risa
could have
Acid.
caused the hikers to snap and act the way they did, as well as causing their bleeding and foaming of the mouth. Because of this, many think it's possible
Thanks, Risa
that the
Basnai.
Russians had been testing or even dumping their chemicals in the area where the hikers just happened to be.
What?
After all, in 1993, the Soviet Union was already disbanded, an event that caused thousands of these chemical weapons to go missing, the best possibility for explaining how it happened so quickly. Now, following this theory even more, the case gained virtually no media coverage, besides for a single local article, and it's barely known to this day, pushing some to believe that it could have been covered up. And there's also one final key detail that I found in my research that could point to this theory being true. After authorities were alerted that a group of tourists were missing, they
Just in
didn't set
case.
out a search party until a full week had gone by, despite there being clear weather. Some online have taken this as an indication that authorities were waiting for the toxins in the area to clear before beginning their search. But there are some issues.
No, I don't know that
First
one
of all,
come.
the location where the hikers were visiting was fairly popular, and they were a mere 100 meters away from a shelter that was designed for people to stay in.
This channel's popular
So why would
garbage.
the military test or dump weapons
I've
there?
never heard of the
Wouldn't
Khamar
they
Daban
select a more
incident.
remote area?
The fuck are you talking
And
about?
also, how would Valentina... It's a frustrating case as the answer seems so hard to settle on, potentially because it's been incredibly underreported.
Thanks to resub.
And the reports
Eurona.
that are out there are filled with
And
quite
yeah, I
a
know
bit
that
of
one's Sloth.
speculation rather than fact. Also, of the original articles written on this, many were made in other languages, which may have led to things being lost in translation over the years.
Oh, maybe.
And though Valentina's
Maybe talk.
testimony tells us what had happened on those mountains, it's also possible she had misremembered things, especially given the extreme shock and trauma she had experienced. She had also just recently started discussing this event, leaving things to be forgotten over the years. So with all these factors, it's possible we may not even have the full story, which just adds more mystery to this strange case. And given the lack of attention it's received,
They weren't
it's
malnourished
possible
is
we
the
may never
thing.
know for sure what happened in those mountains.
If I had to wager a guess, I'd still go with hypothermia. And what do you mean popular garbage? I've never... fucking Khamar Daban has like nothing about it. Yeah, I think hypothermia. I think it's unlikely she poisoned them. I feel like that would have been easily detected. I also don't think that they ate anything poisonous, considering they weren't malnourished, so they were just eating shit they brought. I think it had to do with literally just hypothermia. And then she just happens to be stronger, built differently. Deadliest computer virus by Disrupt. The world's deadliest computer virus. Alright.
A 6.5 magnitude earthquake is shaking the foundations of the Bangai Islands. 93 million miles away, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter.
Oh, is it a
Saturn,
space virus?
And the Sun. All conjoined
Aliens hacked our hentai folders?
Back at the equator, it's early morning. A student presents an idea for his senior thesis. He says the internet has become too costly for the average person.
Damn, this is really well made. Holy shit.
He can create a program that would retrieve the account logins of other individuals, hijack their internet.
Thanks for resub, Tim Tom.
Obviously, he wouldn't release the bug. He just wants to show he can do it before graduation. The dean's response?
We do not... What does that say?
Student writes...
We do not produce burglocks. What is that, like a Magic the Gathering card? What the fuck is a burglock? We do not... burger? No, it's not a burger. What the fuck is this? Burglars! Oh, this is a K. Oh, I thought this was a K. Burglars. He just... he forgot this part, so it looks like a K. Okay.
The last line of code. He originally developed it to be geolocked to Manila, a safety net. But last minute, out of sheer curiosity,
Thanks to resub, Yanray.
he removes the geographic restriction. Shrouded in the universal message of peace, the file looks to be from a secret admirer.
Oh, this is like the... Ooh, this is a classic.
Once opened, the full file extension reveals itself.
Hey, thank you,
This
Tip.
is a visual
Thanks for resub,
basic
Come Dragon.
It uses an exploit in early computer systems that allowed it to run system code simply by being opened. The top two files are sent to the Windows system folder, where they wait. The bottom one is sent to the Windows directory.
Production on this is off the
where it
fucking
creates its
charts.
own key in the local machine registry. This causes other programs to run as soon as the system boots, before the user even has a chance to log in. From there, it opens Internet Explorer and randomly picks from a series of 4 web pages. Once landed, it downloads winbugsfix.exe. Then, it adds another registry key at the starting line.
Okay.
It gathers the system
What does it all mean?
password, IP address,
Oh.
and remote access information, packages it up neatly, and sends it to mailme at super.net.ph. After the details are set,
I love that he has like his own
word
little
searches
fucking
for
video
files
game world
containing
here to
extensions
enter.
like .js or
It's like Code Miko
.css.
shit.
It overwrites them with the file extension. It does the same for JPEGs and MP3s, rendering them completely unretrievable.
World's deadliest computer virus.
Once the damage is done, the worm enters Outlook, scans for emails, then sends itself using the originator's email
Thanks to
address.
Tier 1 Seagull and resub Rimbuck.
Destruction is now spreading through a message of peace and love.
You are watching Disrupt.
This is movie quality shit here.
From Philippines to Hong Kong, the virus has infected several large corporations and banks. Not only deleting important files within the companies, grabbing the email listings of all individuals in contact. From there, it jumps to Europe, where it wreaks particular damage to the email servers within the House of Commons. They're forced to shut down, same with the Denmark Parliament. With classified documents in danger of being wiped out.
Who the fuck
US
opened
Air
I
Force
love you
deployed
emails at the Parliament building?
Works
Nobody's
by
getting an I
utilizing
love you
the
message there.
sensors that the Air Force had previously placed across bases throughout the country. It then creates a sort of window for centralized command to view
Exit
incoming
Tier 1
emails.
Nathan, computer virus.
When the email matches
Yeah,
the
but
description, command sends a
not understanding,
TCP
like, the video.
reset to that desktop.
Giving
Just explaining the virus?
Yeah, and what? It's a like a history lesson.
Ugh.
The private
That's
sector
boring.
is not so lucky.
Oh,
Most
well, I
companies are
highly
using
disagree.
Outlook, including AT&T and Ford. They are forced to take their email servers offline.
Exit Tier 1 your friend
The virus
Tio and
has
the
now
Prime
affected
Nardo.
nearly 55 million computers. Along with the emails, a second spreader has been identified. Within the original files, one is named mirc.ini.
Oh, I thought it was gonna be a
This is the
dude's
computer
name.
farm IRC client.
It was just a picture of my dad.
It automatically
He was spreading it back in 2000.
Contacts that the victim may share on a server. Instead of a love letter, though, it sends this message. Thinking it's a legit file, tech-savvy users of IRC would recognize the name, the author of MIRC. It's only after running the script.
Thanks a gift sub your friend in the resub
CrITiKaL. Do with it. Security analysts are scanning the virus, looking for clues as to the origin. They find that a component within closely resembles a password cracker named that was discovered 4 months earlier. They find within it signed names and resumes, an entry that says, in the resume portion is an extended list of
like the Joker with a calling card.
Along with a group title.
Good man.
This traces back to an after-school club at a computer college in the Philippines. An apartment is raided. Inside is a man, a woman, and an empty desk with a dusty outline of a Gateway Performance 1500.
How do they know?
The man, now identified as Romo Ramones, is the boyfriend of Irene de Guzman.
Oh, is this something that actually
who
happened?
is the older sister of a student
in
the college.
No, I thought it was just explaining what could have happened
just
if
so happens
this
to
happened.
be on the list.
What?
I didn't know that they actually had a virus go through. When was this?
2000.
Oh, well, that's why.
Exit tier 1 Pinkerton, the Prime Kawarda. Resub Jake.
You're going to find that it's a lot lighter than usual as you drive eastbound from the...
That was Love Shack by the B-52s. You're listening to 102.7 KISS FM. Folks, it's a sunny 75.5 degrees in Los Angeles.
Fucking 3. Why would I know about this?
It's Win a Porsche Friday. You know the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember it super well either, but I don't know why it'd be a fake history lesson.
I didn't realize that it was a history lesson. I mean, he's just explaining what happens if a virus goes through and all this stuff happens. I didn't know it was something that really happened that way. That it was just going through like this could happen if this...
I get
Very
ya.
recognizable as our current day web. This is before .coms and .orgs.
Hey, he said like a history lesson. Doesn't make me think it actually happened and it's an actual history
came across
lesson.
a telephone number for ARPANET was the first wide area network that allowed different connections to send information to each other. Also known
I wonder if they're gonna bring up my old website here for evidence. I remember I had a Pixo.
his home modem. Sure enough,
Maybe that's the key.
He's gained access to the University of California, Berkeley. Diving further, he discovers there's potential government documents hidden behind a password. He tries guessing. He tries
UCB.
Over the next
Good
few weeks,
guess.
Dante continues logging in. For him, it's less about obtaining sensitive information or leaking it, more about gaining power, snooping around, seeing how far he can cross the line. On one of his deep dives, he makes a fatal error. He forgets to mask his login name.
Why
This
even make
error
the
lights up
login
a
name
silent flag
your name?
Miles away.
Make
from
it like
security office.
Dick Hard Thundercock
Unbeknownst
or
to
something.
Kevin,
Who cares?
He continues. The kid answers the door. He's greeted by the Los Angeles DA. They seize his computer, but since he's underage, he isn't charged.
Now he works for NSA.
In the back
Maybe
reaches
tier 1
of a
Sentient
Menlo
Salt
Park
and the
storage
resub
facility,
Moshe and the 2
two
gift subs
workers are
Linen.
clearing out unpaid storage units.
Already
It's a
seen that
routine
seagull.
job.
It's like a
Break
300
open
million
lock,
view video.
Clear out the belongings, auction off what they can. But in this particular unit, they find something. The Stanford Research Institute, one of the centers impacted by the previous escapades,
Is it Prime
reaches
Rye?
out to Kevin, proposing that he works for them, securing their network. The 18-year-old is hired.
Hey, congrats, Kevin! Fuck
He's
yeah!
gone to a few blocks from the main entrance
Big
of
pickup.
SRI. He spends his days working on encryption algorithms for secure military communications. He's successfully gone from an underground black hat hacker to a white hat hacker with a paycheck. Detective James Neal of the Menlo Park PD thinks he's looking at a standard case of stolen property. The storage bill is assigned to
Thanks to the anonymous gift sub.
John Anderson. A quick search finds this name to be a fake. Upon further inspection of the unit, the detective finds blank IDs and a document containing an unpublished number of the Soviet embassy.
Oh boy!
Another document.
We've been infiltrated.
The name.
Thanks to the 5 gift subs, Shubi, and the Prime Urinal Goblin, and Dad Kisser. Cool name.
The National Bureau of Investigation issues a mandatory court appearance for 2 students. Onel de Guzman, who originally proposed the thesis, and Michael Buen, who is suspected to have helped write the structure of the worm.
This is his trial date still pending 21 years later. One day we'll ask him about it.
The worm continues its spread, though the effects are beginning to weaken. A press conference is called. The guest of honor, Onel de Guzman. When asked if he's the one who unleashed the virus, Onel states, and when questioned if he feels anything.
Oh come
about
on,
the damage
go
caused,
hard with the
he looks
supervillain
down,
shit.
mumbles nothing, then covers his ears. Being the first large-scale computer crime out of the Philippines,
Thanks to the resub, Jeff.
authorities have trouble charging Onel.
And drop bears.
Over the subsequent months,
Been alright, man. Hope you had a good
Philippine
day.
Congress passed legislation dealing with computer-related crimes. But seeing as this was made official after Onel's stunt, he can't be charged. Ultimately, the case against him boils down to credit card fraud. Onel never admits
Thanks to
to
5 gift
creating
subs,
the
sticky
virus,
keys, and resub
only that
plant.
he may have inadvertently released the program. All charges against him are dropped. In total, the estimated damages are said to exceed
$7.8 billion US fiat.
in wipe files
Wow, not bad.
for cleanup.
Fuck yeah, Onel de Guzman. Congrats.
He finally admits to creating the virus and releasing it. He said he did it alone.
But why? What did he want? The madman.
ABS files have been written. And nope, it's been overwritten. It will not boot.
Exit Prime, Narfles,
Right
and
now,
resub
a cybersecurity specialist
Lyricity.
is deep in an organization's
Yeah, we'll do
infrastructure.
Darkman in a bit.
He's well equipped to face any situation that may arise, but he started at the fundamentals. Is offering computer science courses at a fraction of the cost of traditional university rates.
Wait, this is absolutely an
Whether you're looking
ad.
to become a network engineer, cybersecurity
Yeah,
specialist,
oh, it was still so well produced, I thought it was part of the hack. Shit, they almost had me. God, it's like the fucking Chris Angel pre-commercial,
Intro,
yeah, pre-commercial shit. It's so
Paulson is
fucking
brought in for
cool.
questioning. He denies everything.
Please resub Zeus.
A few hours later, they accompany him to
I
his
thought that
condo.
said I forgot the
Inside,
law, not
they
I
find a
fought the
room full
law.
of more
I was like, what?
One of these is a lineman's headset. This device can be connected wherever there are exposed telephone wires accessible. When connected to a line, the handset is essentially indistinguishable from regular telephones, except it can intercept active calls, answer incoming calls, and make outgoing
Imagine
calls.
having to straighten all those wires
Back
out.
then, you needed
Yeah.
a license to
Sort them.
operate it. Something Kevin is lacking. They confiscate some of the equipment and start their investigation.
Is that Kevin, that son of a bitch?
Documents and equipment. They
Going in there to
find
flip over a
series
fax
of
machine?
Pictures. A young, slender male crouching down and picking the lock
Slender
of
Man.
a Pacific Bell trailer. Further pictures show
Whoa!
the same subject inside the telephone trailer, posing with it.
We got him. Thanks to the resub
For the
Shabay.
past 4 years, Poulsen has been finding a particular thrill in dumpster diving.
Okay.
This will be your last chance to get the...
Who doesn't love a good
Using
dumpster, huh?
those to gain access to physical networks.
Have you ever
FBI
dumpster dived?
agents
Nope.
silently surround
I just
Kevin's
like
home
garbage
in
trucks.
Hollywood. Then,
Like a real
the
man.
leader's phone rings. The agents immediately trace the call, only to be led straight to a Pacific Bell number. Instead of jumping town and heading out of country, Kevin decides to
Thanks for
stay
5
close
subs,
to
Chance. And 3 sub
dyes
Nocturne.
his hair a different color.
Thank you, Chance.
Picks up a new identity. To get some quick cash, he utilizes his phone line skills in an all-too-easy scheme.
We're sorry. All of our representatives are still assisting other customers.
It's a sunny 75.5 degrees in Los Angeles, and today isn't just any
Dark Souls win. Soon. We'll hit more Dark Souls soon.
It's Win a Porsche Friday. You know the rules.
Thanks to tier 1 monolithic.
I'm going to bed.
Yeah, sleep well.
Let's roll.
Kevin flips a switch, blocks every other caller from reaching the line. Now, any line that is picked up would redirect to him,
You don't have to be up for anything.
including the 102nd.
Not early.
Congratulations, you've won a brand new Porsche. Who's the lucky winner?
Wow, I can't believe it. This
Thanks to tier 1 Gantz.
Michael B. Peters.
One can only speculate about what motivated Kevin Poulsen.
Oh God!
Before he fled
It's
that he's
non-pedophile hunter Chris Hansen.
young man, possibly a genius. But now he is a wanted man, facing up to 37 years in prison.
A TV show has just aired an episode about Kevin's hacks. The show opens their phone lines to callers that may have tips about the subjects. On the premiere of this particular episode, the phone lines are jammed.
Classic Kevin.
During his time laying,
He released an EMP
LA Vice
device.
Squad, a division focused on public order crimes like narcotics and gambling, pick up Kevin on an undisclosed minor crime. Eventually, though, they release him, failing to check the federal warrant database.
That was lucky.
The feds have received a tip that Kevin is still living in LA.
Thanks to gift sub against Sticky.
Question some of his acquaintances. One says that he frequents. They go to the store, give the employees his picture, and wait.
Just go to a different market. You can't be forming habits as a criminal.
Is working the night shift.
Gotta keep them on their toes.
He spots a familiar face. Kevin has dyed his hair a light blonde, but it isn't enough.
Hey Wheeler, thanks for the 5 gift
Store
subs,
clerk
man.
dials the authorities, ensuring Kevin doesn't spot him. By the time they arrive, Kevin is gone. For the next 24 hours, the agent on duty, Terry, stakes out the parking lot.
Thanks to
Kevin
Prime,
pulls
see
up.
that?
Terry takes a position at the front door. 2 clerks sneak up behind Kevin and tackle him to the ground. Hearing the
But it
commotion,
wasn't
Terry
Kevin.
runs in.
It was a 9-year-old schoolboy Kevin
They bring
paid
him into the back room
to impersonate him.
transportation can arrive. As if on cue, Kevin begins complaining that his eyes are watering. He requests that he take his contact lenses out and get the glasses from a bag in his car. Terry agrees and retrieves the bag, but he checks it before handing it over. Sure enough, in the glasses case is a universal handcuff key.
Oh, wait, what? I still think it's super dumb that all handcuffs use the same key. I think that's so fucking dumb. What an oversight.
She recognizes the phrase and calls one of Kevin's hacker friends, who subsequently retrieves an incriminating computer from an undisclosed location. However, the police are a step ahead. Months earlier, they recruited a local hacker to infiltrate the local LA hacker circle. He rings the bell and the incriminating computer is intercepted. It takes nearly 9 months for them to decrypt it. Nearly 2 years after his arrest, Poulsen is accused of 19 counts that include conspiracy,
rough.
connection with access devices,
They got him.
interception of wire or electronic communications, and money laundering. He faces 100 years in prison and nearly $5 million in fines.
Give him a job.
This is considered one of the first large-scale cases against the newly defined
Thank you,
crime
Prime Toad.
of hacking. If successfully charged, they hope to send a clear message to the mid-90s hacking community. Eventually, Poulsen pleads guilty to several counts of computer fraud.
Why are
fraud,
people arrested
wire
for
fraud,
money laundering?
and money laundering. He's ordered to
Are
pay
you serious?
$58K in fines and given a 51-month sentence. Kevin is released on parole. By court order, he's barred from using computers. For the first time in the 2000s, he flips the switch. He gains access.
No, Kevin, fuck! Wait, 2012?
Okay, this is the question. Did I ever consider leaving California altogether, going across the country? I did consider that, but... And
I don't think I'm going to watch CSGO Rage. It doesn't sound very fun.
I wanted to solve the problem, not run away from it.
Oh, I thought he turned into Tony Hawk for a second. He gave up hacking and now he just skateboards.
Hey, so I was just thinking about how everyone in the world has their own conscience, their own lives, everything. Everyone alive is living. So then I thought about how much computer processing power it would
Pretty
take to
impressive.
simulate, everybody's
Not
conscience.
bad.
I'm not saying that our universe is simulated. I don't actually believe in that theory.
Oh, okay.
All I'm saying is that...
Is this Kevin?
Just stop for a moment and think about how much processor power would be required to simulate everybody's conscience. Another thing...
Okay. We don't need to get too deep into the weeds of simulated universe, I suppose.
I'm built differently. I'm built differently. I'm built differently. Yeah, I'm built differently.
He's the tier 1 Ricky McKnight. Is this about the declassified UFO footage that the government released last year?
In early 2007, this silent black and white video was uploaded by a user on a conspiracy and UFO-centric forum called Above Top Secret. The user claimed the video depicted a disc-shaped UFO outmaneuvering a fighter jet somewhere off the coast of Mexico in the mid-2000s. They had supposedly gained access to the video while serving on board a US aircraft carrier and claimed to have smuggled the potentially classified material.
Hold on real quick, I want to send this to my dad. My dad loves UFO shit. Give me 1 second to send it to him. Okay, there we go. Thanks for the resub, Matt.
Off the ship. While some members of the forum chose to believe their story, others were not so easily convinced. For instance, the video was hosted on a website belonging to a group of German film students, which led some to denounce the clip as an attempted hoax. Even those who believed it could be genuine still complained that it was a totally uninspiring video of a fuzzy dot.
Thanks for the resub, David.
Over a decade later, this long-forgotten video suddenly resurfaced as part of an article by the New York Times. The video was now linked to a secret government-funded program and was even corroborated by a credible eyewitness. What had initially been dismissed as a hoax turned out to be real. The video was said to depict a genuine encounter between US Navy fighter jets and some sort of unidentified craft.
I just wish the video was better, because the video itself is pretty underwhelming.
A video of a similar yet completely separate incident was also featured at the beginning of the article, except this one had sound.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
These two videos, along with a third released a few months later, spread across the internet like wildfire. Comment sections and discussion threads were dominated by unrestrained speculation about aliens and paranormal phenomena. The skeptics meanwhile took it upon themselves to analyze every pixel in every frame in the hopes of uncovering some
It does look
neglected
fucking
clue
weird.
that could identify these fussy blobs.
It's like a
Any
Beyblade
lingering doubts about
vertically.
the video's authenticity vanished with the release of an official statement by the Department of Defense confirming that the videos depicted real events involving unidentified aerial phenomena. So, what exactly are we looking at?
Let's read some Chillowisp. I'm super sorry to hear that taken. Well, I'm wishing her and your family the best, man. Good luck.
The first video was recorded off the northwestern coast of Mexico in late 2004. The story behind it has been recounted by more than a dozen naval officers, and it goes like this.
150 knots crosswind can make a plane go
a naval
backwards.
strike group led by the aircraft carrier the USS Nimitz
intense.
was conducting pre-deployment exercises about 100 kilometers southwest of San Diego. Starting around the 10th of November, radar technicians aboard a guided missile cruiser, the USS Princeton, were puzzled by a series of unidentified radar tracks near San Clemente Island.
Thanks for the resub, official.
The tracks did not resemble any known aircraft and would sporadically appear in groups of 5 to 10 at a time. Suspecting a malfunction of some sort, the recently upgraded Spy-1 radar system was taken offline and recalibrated. Once the system was brought back online, however, the tracks had only become sharper. Among those on board were Senior Chief Operations Specialist Kevin Day, who was an expert on the Spy-1 radar system and had 18 years worth
Every
of
ship should
experience
have
at
like
the
an
time of
alien
the
conspiracy
incident.
theorist on
Day
it.
observed firsthand how these unknown targets alternated between slightly strange and physics-defying maneuvers. Sometimes a cluster of tracks would appear out of nowhere and slowly drift south. They were flying too high to be birds, too slow to be conventional aircraft, and did not follow any commercial airways. Other times, they would seemingly descend from space and drop all the way down to sea level in mere seconds.
Wow!
These phenomena continued for several days, and every time they reappeared, the crew would run up to the bridge and use a pair of heavily magnified binoculars to see these tiny
like a bird
specks moving erratically.
Yeah, like a bird.
On the morning of November the 14th, the crew on board the USS Nimitz were gearing up for a scheduled air defense exercise. They had not yet been informed of the unusual returns picked up by the Princeton. It was a cloudless day, and the sea was calm as pilots took to the skies.
Thanks to Prime Midnight.
One of them was Lieutenant Colonel Douglas Kurth,
What's
who
up,
was
Doug?
flying a single-seat FA-18 fighter jet when he was contacted by the Princeton.
Thanks to Prime
He
Min.
was instructed to investigate an unknown target approaching from the south. The Princeton also wanted to know if he carried any weapons, to which the answer was no. Kurth made his way to the specified coordinates but did not pick up anything on sensors. As he looked down towards the ocean, however, his attention was immediately drawn towards a turbulent patch of water. Kurth claims to have seen a roundish disturbance on the ocean, which appeared as though something was submerged just below the surface. It reminded him of a submarine or ship slowly sinking into the ocean. The Nimitz strike group did include a nuclear-powered submarine named the USS Louisville. The Louisville was in the vicinity when Kurth made his observations, so the churning may indeed have been caused by a submerging submarine.
That
if not,
makes sense.
then whatever was in the water.
But what if it was a
managed to evade
kaiju?
detection by the Louisville's extremely sensitive sonar. Kurth was soon joined by a squadron of 2 tandem-seated F-18s, the lead aircraft of which was piloted by Commander David Fravor. Much like Kurth, Fravor claims to have seen a disturbance on the ocean, which he described as having a vaguely cross-like shape. He thought it resembled a downed airliner.
It was
and
Jesus
described the
Christ
size
in his
as
space
much
vessel.
larger than a submarine. While Kurth eventually circled back for the Nimitz, Fravor and his wingman decided
Then
to get
all of a
closer.
sudden they looked on their lap and there was a piece
As
of
they
toast
began their descent,
with
they
a beard
noticed a white
and long hair.
capsule-shaped craft moving erratically above the disturbance. At first, they thought it could be a helicopter, but there were no rotor blades. In fact, it was perfectly smooth. No markings, no exhaust, no protrusions of any kind. The UFO appeared to maintain a consistent altitude, but made rapid lateral movements with no visible means of propulsion. According to Fravor, it was a bit smaller than an F-18 and resembled a giant mint of Tic Tac.
What?
As Fravor continued to descend, his wingman
They're
decided
flying
to
around
maintain
in birth
altitude
control
and
pills
kept
in
watching from
space?
above. Flying in a spiraling downward motion, Fravor was getting closer and closer until suddenly the UFO realigned its axis and began to climb at an incredible rate of speed. Both of them were now flying in a circle. The UFO was coming up while the F-18 was going down. In an effort to close the distance between them, Fravor made a final aggressive turn before the UFO rapidly accelerated up to hypersonic speed and disappeared in a matter of seconds.
Why don't planes have a fucking video camera on them?
Perfectly calm.
It'd be so much easier to verify these things if the fucking pilot just had a goddamn iPhone attached to it somewhere.
And his wingman made it back to the Nimitz. They landed and ran into a different flight crew preparing to head back out. They told them what
they do? Then why wasn't it turned on?
Anything out of the ordinary. Soon thereafter, another tandem-seated F-18.
Thanks for Prime. Random stuff from the resub Owen and
This
Dime.
time, it was outfitted with an advanced targeting forward-looking infrared camera system. This at-flare pod is controlled by the weapons systems operator seated behind the pilot, and the backseater of this flight was Lieutenant Chad Underwood. A few minutes after departing the Nimitz, Underwood detected something on his radar. The unknown target was directly ahead, a few tens of kilometers.
It's on that fucking infrared camera or whatever, and it looks like shit.
Its altitude
the AC-130 cam. It's like shit.
According to Underwood, it simply did not abide by the known laws of physics. At some point, Underwood managed to get a lock on the target with the at-flare camera, and this is when the much-publicized video was recorded.
See, it looks like dog shit.
We see a UFO being tracked in infrared.
Just show me a
switches to
fucking
visible light,
clear video.
revealing an out-of-focus, rounded mass in the distance. He then switches back to infrared and alternates between two different zoom levels on multiple occasions. Not much happens until the very end of the video, when the UFO suddenly disappears off to the left-hand side of the screen. As the target was too far away to be seen with the naked eye, neither Underwood nor his pilot ever made visual contact. The Princeton continued to detect anomalous radar tracks for at least 2 more days, and according to Senior Chief Day, they eventually disappeared near the Mexican island of Guadalupe.
Hold on, I need some water. I love this shit though. I've always had a big fascination with UFOs and aliens and all that. I'll be right back. And thanks to the Prime Big Nut. Oh shit. Thanks to the Prime
In
Lucid.
complete isolation, utterly divorced from any and all surrounding context, this video is extraordinarily unremarkable.
Agreed.
It's a fuzzy blob against a featureless background. It's only when you place it in the middle of these truly remarkable stories that the video itself becomes remarkable. When skeptics and debunkers claim that this is a distant airplane, I understand why many are so opposed to that explanation, because the witness accounts say otherwise. A distant airplane can't just zip around the sky as if gravity was non-existent. It doesn't make any sense. Unfortunately, we don't see any of those physics-defying maneuvers in the video. In fact, this fuzzy blob does not do much of anything until the very end, when it suddenly disappears off to the left-hand side of the screen.
Yeah, it doesn't even disappear
some claim
fast.
This is due to a sudden acceleration by the UFO, but it could also be something as simple as the camera losing its target lock. It's difficult to tell.
True. Thanks to resub
Underwood
Habla and
himself
Soup.
is uncertain about what happens at the end, as he never made visual
That'd be cool
contact.
looking.
The witness accounts, meanwhile, are so extraordinary they are difficult to believe. If any regular person claimed to have seen a Tic Tac shaped UFO moving erratically in the sky, a few would listen. But when that same story is told by some of the most qualified observers on the planet, it makes you wonder. And it wasn't just 1 or 2. These UFOs were either seen or tracked by dozens of experienced aviators and sailors for nearly a week. They were seen from multiple vantage points and tracked by one of the most sophisticated radar systems in the world. To think that all of them are lying or all of them were deceived by some prosaic phenomena seems absurd. At the same time, there is no way to verify what they're saying. We have no choice but to take them at their word. We don't have the radar data, the radio communication logs, nor any corroborating evidence. Well, except for this pixel-deficient footage, I guess. Some of the witnesses claimed there was actually a much longer and much higher resolution video than the one we see today. They claimed to have seen this video on board the Princeton and that the shape of the UFO was perfectly clear as it violently maneuvered around the screen. What's interesting about this claim is that when the video was first leaked online back in 2007, the anonymous leaker claimed they had 4 different versions of the video in their possession. 2 of them were said to be shorter, but the 4th was said to be twice as long and supposedly showed more UFO movement. Unfortunately, this extended version has never seen the light of day.
Until
And if some
now.
of the witnesses are to be
I'll
believed,
release it if we
likely
get
never
200k
will.
viewers
You see,
right
on the
now.
evening of November the 14th, all the footage and data from these events were supposedly erased. Witnesses claimed that 2 men arrived via helicopter who then collected the relevant data before having all the tapes and hard drives wiped clean. Witnesses from both the Nimitz and Princeton
Do you think if
recall
there
such a
was
visit
alien
and
visits,
insist that nothing like it had
it
ever
really
happened
wouldn't
before?
leak?
This has
I genuinely
understandably led to
find that hard to
speculations
believe.
of
I
some
feel
sort
like
of
it'd have to
cover-up,
leak.
that these sightings were that of top-secret military drones or aircraft. While the US military is undoubtedly experimenting with all kinds of cutting-edge technology, it is difficult to believe they possess gravity-defying, hypersonic flying Tic Tacs. If so, they would possess technology so far beyond anything known to the public, it would be akin to magic. And this was back in 2004.
It has leaked, we
Don't get
just
me
don't
wrong,
believe it.
2004 was a
No,
magical time
I don't.
compared to
I don't think that's.
but it was
that's
still
it.
aggressively 2004.
Flat ball from a disc to a ball right before your eyes. Catch it, flatten it, and let it fly. Flat ball.
Flat ball
I really
was
don't
pretty
know
cool.
what to make of this story. After reading, watching, and listening to so many interviews with the people who were there, I'm left with a distinct impression that they're telling the truth. The video, on the other hand, does little to support their claims. Sure, this fuzzy blob
get
may
some
be
crusty.
unidentified, but it's not unexplainable.
Do people really think if aliens exist, they can travel at light speed? They don't have the technology to
The
not be
second
seen?
and third videos were recorded off the
I have no
southeastern
fucking
coast
idea.
of the United States in early 2015.
Not exactly
While
the
those
same
who
thing.
recorded the footage
Invisibility
have
and
yet to come
speed don't
forward,
go hand in
some
hand.
of their crewmates and fellow pilots have, and according to them, the story goes like this. In the summer of 2014, a naval strike group led by the aircraft carrier the USS Theodore Roosevelt was conducting pre-deployment exercises somewhere off the coast of Virginia. Much like with the Nimitz encounters, the first sign of trouble came in the form of anomalous radar tracks. Following a fleet-wide upgrade of aircraft radar systems, pilots had begun to pick up unidentified targets while
Thanks,
conducting
Resub Aiden.
routine training missions.
Doesn't the universe expand faster than the speed of light? I see a lot of people again spamming that it's impossible to travel faster, which, I mean, obviously current understanding would say so, yeah. But doesn't the universe expand faster than the speed of light, or does it expand at the speed of light? Let's see. Oops. Okay. Not super helpful. Let's ask this a little better. Okay, so the universe expands faster than the speed of light, but nothing in it does. So what the fuck? How does... It's such a baffling concept. Very interesting. So how the fuck can the universe go faster than the speed of light with its expansion, but the things that are left in it aren't traveling at that speed? Yeah, if only Yahoo Answers could solve this for me. Crazy. Exit Tier 1,
The tracks
Amelia.
were initially dismissed as false positives,
Resub Jojo.
but their behavior was unlike anything they had seen before.
True, Rope.
Gravity-defying maneuvers, hypersonic velocities, and other mystifying shenanigans. Attempts to intercept these UFOs were initially unsuccessful, Lieutenant Danny Acoin claims that on 2 separate occasions he tried but failed to make visual contact. Then, one day, a squadron is said to have narrowly avoided a mid-air collision with one of these UFOs. The 2 jets had been flying in tandem, no more than a few tens of meters apart, when something flew right in between them.
What was that, the
that
box
something
ghost?
Was oddly described as a cube encased by a translucent sphere.
What?
Lieutenant Ryan Graves, who spoke to one of the pilots once they had landed, claims the experience had visibly spooked them. So much
Thanks
so,
Prime
the
Samuel.
squadron filed an official safety report. According to Graves, this was far from an isolated incident. These UFOs were allegedly seen by dozens of pilots for several months and could remain airborne for up to 12 hours at a time. Yet, despite growing concerns among the Roosevelt crew, training missions continued as if nothing was amiss. By early 2015, the Roosevelt strike group had made its way down to the coast of Florida, which is when the 2 now famous videos were recorded, both of which are said to be short clips taken from much longer and higher resolution footage. We don't know much about the circumstances as the officers involved.
So this
chosen to
happened
remain
near
silent,
Florida?
but
Are we sure it wasn't just like a meth addict who made a homemade plane and all of the jerky movements are him crashing?
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating.
So, there are a few things to unpack in this one. If we ignore the audio for a moment and focus solely on the visuals, the thing that immediately stands out is the apparent rotation of the UFO.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I use the word apparent because some debunkers claim that this rotation is an optical illusion.
Fuck.
You see, the Atflare
Nothing's
pod is
real.
equipped with something known as a derotation mechanism. It's meant to counteract the rotation of the camera so that the orientation of the image stays the same, also known as image stabilization. What may not be stabilized, however, are certain artifacts produced by the lens of the camera. You can even try this yourself. Aim a camera towards a light source, rotate the camera, stabilize the footage, and there you go. The orientation of the image is preserved while these spokes of light rotate along with the camera. So much like how the light from this light bulb is producing a lens flare, the infrared radiation from this UFO is said to be producing a lens glare. In other words, the bunkers claim it is the camera and thereby the glare which is rotating, not the UFO itself. While this explanation
You
seems
ruined
perfectly
Christmas then.
reasonable to
Fuck
my
you.
untrained
I thought that was
eyes,
cool.
Things get a bit more confusing once we bring back the audio.
Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating.
If this rotation is merely the result
Thanks to
of
Prime,
image
Miss
stabilization,
Hoku,
why
and the
would the 2
resub
pilots fail
JHBT,
to recognize it as
the resub
such?
Fran, and the
Surely
resub
they, if
Faku.
anyone, would know what that looks like. And they're not alone. Both Lieutenant Graves and Acoin believe it is the UFO which is rotating. Furthermore, an expert on the Atflare system has very plainly stated that this is not an optical illusion. But this is not the only puzzling comment made by the 2 pilots.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
So the radar is supposedly detecting a whole fleet of UFOs, which are all traveling crosswind. I mean, if what
Can't
we're
click
looking
links, by
at
the
is
way,
something
Fanta.
prosaic, like the blooming exhaust of a jet engine, these comments don't make a whole lot of sense. I would love to hear what these 2 pilots have to say if they ever decide to come forward. Until then, all we can do is speculate.
Thanks for the 5 gift subs again, Syaxis. Appreciate the generosity.
Nickel 6-1 Tango Project, Roger, there's troubleshooting Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly!
That's definitely a
This
kid
video
who just
may
got his
seem very
superpowers.
striking at
That's like the
first,
first
but
thing
it is
anyone that can
arguably
fly
the
would do.
least interesting of the three. Once again, let's ignore the audio for a moment and focus solely on the visuals. Unlike the previous two, the UFO in this one is colder than its surroundings, so the ocean below is radiating more heat than whatever this is. It may look as though the UFO is traveling at high speed, but this is likely the result of parallax. In short, aircraft go fast,
Resub Danny. The
camera
Prime
fixed
slick.
on not so fast UFO appear to go fast.
Interesting, Naruto.
Some say the UFO is near sea level and therefore the parallax explanation doesn't work, but we can actually derive its altitude using the numbers on screen and find that that is not true. Everything seen in this video is consistent with a balloon or some sort of debris floating in the wind. The commentary by the pilots, however, does once again introduce a bit of confusion. I mean, it seems odd for the pilots to be so excited over something so mundane, but without hearing from the pilots themselves...
Maybe the pilots are just fucking dumb. Like, you know, it's totally possible. We can fly a plane, but we're also kind of fucking dumb. We don't know what it looks like when a grocery bag gets picked up by a strong wind. You know, I can't rule it out.
The person responsible for making these videos available to the public is a man named Lou Elizondo. Beginning in 2008, Elizondo was the head of a secret government-funded effort to investigate UFO sightings known as the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. By late 2017, however, Elizondo had grown so disillusioned with the government's lack of interest in the program's efforts that he decided to resign. In his resignation letter, Elizondo writes that certain individuals within the government are staunchly opposed to UFO research, that inflexible mindsets and political contention essentially prevented him from doing his job. He portrays the government as virtually unconcerned about an issue which he believes could pose a threat to national security, so much so that he felt it necessary to resign in protest. This seemingly uncaring attitude was also noted by witnesses of both the Nimitz and Roosevelt encounters.
Once we were in the road and saw a diaper flying in the air, must have been that and just didn't stop flying.
Completely unfazed
He cracked
by this
it.
video.
That's probably what it
On
was.
the day when it was captured, he supposedly looked at it for 5 seconds, then walked away without saying a word. Some of the senior officers on board the Nimitz and Princeton are said to have had an equally muted response. These are very bizarre reactions to potential airspace incursions. You'd think they'd want to make sure these UFOs are not some kind of threat. The near mid-air collision reported by one of the squadrons from the Roosevelt seems especially concerning.
Not really concerning, it was just, it had a mission.
Many point to the severe stigma surrounding the topic of UFOs. Regardless of how inaccurate it may be, the term UFO has, for many, become synonymous with aliens.
God damn right.
So much
bet
so,
your
the
sweet
government
ass.
now favors the term UAP, specifically to avoid this unwanted association. Whether sightings go unreported or uninvestigated, the argument is that people choose to look the other way because they're concerned about their reputation. No one wants to be seen as a nutcase and potentially lose out on a promotion.
Makes the bits ash
Others
wave.
believe there could be something a bit more conniving at play, that no serious action is taken because a highly advanced and top-secret
There's a
drone
prime rental.
program is responsible for the sightings. Even some of the witnesses have entertained that possibility. For instance, Sean Cahill, who was the chief master at arms on board the Princeton, perceived the inaction of senior staff as a clear sign that the UFOs were known military assets. But as previously mentioned, it is difficult to believe such radical innovation could have taken place in absolute secrecy. We're talking about such advanced technology,
I don't think
it
so,
would barely
Gordy.
make sense in a science fiction novel. Vehicles that
That's
can exceed
crazy,
the speed of
Pepin, yeah.
sound without producing any
Time
sonic
flies.
booms. Vehicles that can drop or climb to virtually any altitude in a matter of seconds. Vehicles that can violently change direction of travel as if inertia was a mere suggestion. None of that should be possible, yet dozens of trained observers claim they witnessed the impossible. The least uncomfortable solution, therefore, is to simply not believe them. Sure, the witnesses are credible, but they're not incontrovertible. Everything from optical illusions to faulty equipment could be used to cast doubt
There's
on
a
their
tier 1
extraordinary
ninth
tales.
vessel in the Prime
And without
Legend.
any corroborating evidence, except for this nebulous footage, That is not a difficult task. As such, many government officials may not seem concerned because they genuinely believe there is nothing.
I have
to
an
be
alien
concerned
story.
about.
I'll tell it in a second. Not the one I told last time.
Personally, I'm left feeling very
Thanks for your
conflicted.
Empress.
On the one hand, I find the witness accounts quite compelling. On the other, I find this grainy trilogy of dots in the sky somewhat underwhelming.
Agreed.
Sure, the videos are fascinating, but they're also far too ambiguous to provide any decisive answers. I highly recommend that you seek out and listen to some of the witness accounts so that you can
Favorite
judge
monster
for yourself.
truck? I'm not sure. The one that did a front flip.
This is very much a developing situation. By the time you watch this video, chances are more information will have been released.
Nope.
According
none.
to Elizondo, the Nimitz and Roosevelt encounters are just the tip of the iceberg. Sightings by military personnel are said to be commonplace. It's just that we rarely hear about them. I can only hope that more evidence is released in the near future and that at least one video depicts something inexplicable. Something that is unidentified because it defies explanation,
Yeah,
not
that'd be
because
cool.
it's too distant, too small, or otherwise too obscure. No, but something truly extraordinary.
That's sweet,
That's what I
Buttercup.
want to see.
That was a cool video. So, like I said, my dad is super fucking into this alien shit, and I've told this story before, but a long time ago, my mom and dad were friends with a really high-ranking officer in the U.S. military, and the guy was fucking wild. So, I mean, the guy's real. Like, I even looked into him to make sure like they didn't just get scammed or something. So the guy, I won't drop his name for obvious reasons. He was like a really high-ranking military guy. It's hard to like explain the story without like fucking giving away the guy's info. He was like the head of a very big air base, and when he retired, dude got kind of big into the alcohol. And he would give away, like, a lot of shit that he probably shouldn't to my parents. Some of it, like, standard war shit. But then, like, my dad, being as curious as he was about aliens, would always bring up, like, UFO shit and alien shit. And I don't know if he was just fucking with my dad, but he would always, like, go down that path. He'd be, like, very serious and be talking about, like, how he has had encounters with UFOs and that the government tries to keep it under wraps and that he's seen actual wreckage and shit. So ever since that, my dad has been super fucking adamant that they are real and that the government keeps them under wraps. I think that the family friend was just fucking with him, but it is something interesting to think about. Thanks to the resub, famous ladies man in the prime braid. If he wants to talk about it, I'd fucking love to interview him about it. My dad has told me that shit constantly. Actually, I think he's dead. Is my dad still awake? Let me ask if the guy died. He retired because it was like he suffered some kind of injury or some shit. I'm texting my dad real quick. Yeah, I started Invincible. It's pretty good. Thanks to the resub, ambidextrous. Aliens got him. Nah, he suffered some kind of injury at one of the bases or some shit. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've heard the story, like the full story. Thanks to Tier 1 Viking and the resub Rubhub. And the resub Perpetual Retrograde Jackie and the Prime Play Stuff. Alright, cool. Hold on, he's still awake. I'm gonna call him real quick. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second. Thanks to resub Godslayer. Yeah, the guy I was talking about passed away. Would have been really cool to fucking ask him about it, though. Thanks to the resub Phoenix.
I'm built differently. I'm built differently. I'm built differently. Yeah, I'm built differently.
Night, Christopher.
weekly internet show, The Atheist Experience has ran for over a decade, and generally sees the host debate with various callers over different religious matters. However, during a seemingly regular, if not slightly intense call in 2014,
Thanks, 3 subs.
there was a sudden bizarre and downright chilling moment live on air.
That's just a silly argument. I mean, I understand.
I agree with you. I'm just trying to get at why it's a silly argument.
Well, I understand that statement was originally said by Carl Sagan, but who really cares about, them requiring extraordinary claims and evidence?
So then you should believe I rose from the dead. Okay. I terrified her with my awesome logic.
Apparently.
That's the creepy, mysterious moment?
As heard, while the hosts argue with the caller, she abruptly lets out a blood-curdling scream, and before we can hear any more, they disconnect the call.
What?
Disturbingly, the screams sound uncomfortably real, as though the woman was actually attacked. In fact, many viewers were so convinced the call was genuine that they asked the show to track down the woman's address. Others though aren't so convinced and contend the scream was merely a sound effect.
Belarus.
Still, is it possible the woman was literally murdered on air?
Okay.
What the fuck? Oh my god.
A reality series is one of the last places you'd expect to find credible proof of life after death. However, one Big Brother contestant allegedly heard the voice of her dead sister.
Ué, eu ouvi meu nome.
What?
Cida? Cida? Aonde?
This is a mysterious video?
Aonde?
I think he was just happy to be watching some Brazilian Big Brother here.
Still, the mystery seems over when a fellow contestant claims responsibility.
I'm just gonna skip through this. I think it's just this guy being horny.
In the previous look at mysterious videos, I covered a plane supposedly frozen in the air. To some, this was evidence of the simulation theory.
Thanks to some Chris Crab and
it was just the wind.
Ghetto Works.
However,
and
either
the Dollar
way,
Astro.
these so-called glitches in the Matrix not only affect aircraft, but also apparently birds. Now, admittedly, most of these videos are easily explained as normal hunting behaviour. Yet what if the bird was dead, and still somehow floating?
What is it? What is it? Can you see it?
This is an old patch. Yeah. Just a bit of lag. Desync.
What the hell is that?
According to one onlooker, Nino Tobrak-Kojan, he watched it for at least 2 minutes, but saw no movement whatsoever.
2 minutes?
Unsurprisingly,
he drove right by it.
Has itself led to stranger theories. The common consensus is that it's proof of the aforementioned artificial reality, but alternative bizarre ideas claim it's a government drone, or even a broken alien device. Leave your own theories in the comments.
What the hell is that?
Yes, a broken alien device is pretty reasonable given all the evidence. Thanks to the resub Arisen and Detergent.
If you've spent any time in conspiracy circles, you've likely heard of the chemtrail theory. The idea is that many contrails are actually filled with undisclosed chemical substances.
They're making our dicks smaller.
These chemtrails then slowly poison the atmosphere with the overall purpose of human population control. However,
it's clearly
an
not
additional
working.
And downright bizarre theory posits that said chemicals are released via cloaked government planes. Now, obviously this sounds ridiculous, but believers have offered up some weird videos. Incredibly, on July 17th, 2019, Skywatcher Eye of the Beholder filmed this unexplained anomaly in Bucharest,
Sweet, thanks,
Romania.
Harris. Yeah, I know, I love these things, Mafia. Thanks to the resub, Maddie. And yeah, True Cult.
Still, you might say this was just an optical illusion, yet 2 days before this video was released, amateur researcher Linda Miller captured another one of these planes.
Thanks to the resub Varus. Looks pretty good. I can't.
So could
yeah.
the impossible be true?
There we go.
And the government actually use invisible planes?
Thanks to the resub Clorox in the Prime Stick.
Hidden in the remote Monitor Valley of Nevada lies the boiling hot spring Diane's Punch Bowl. Such extraordinary heat has led to the alternative name Devil's Cauldron. But
I've
could
heard of
there be
that.
an additional and darker reason for this?
Oh.
One person who may have stumbled upon the answer is the channel Texrax. For years, they've tested the durability of multiple pieces of technology via different extreme situations. As such, the boiling cauldron was a perfect place to test the survival capabilities of the iPhone 11.
Okay guys, so check it out.
Thanks to resub Otis.
We're gonna slowly but surely dip it straight in the water.
Still, the
Alright, I'll check it
experiment
out.
seems like a flop with Texrax's first test.
Thanks to Prime Veronis.
However, the second time Texrax drops the phone, he captures something truly chilling.
Wow, what the fuck? It's demons!
Texrax himself is at a loss to explain the screams, but this hasn't stopped his viewers from claiming the cauldron is actually a portal to hell. Now, obviously this theory is speculative at best, but there's no doubt the sounds are unusual. So what's really the answer? Be sure to let me know.
It goes to hell. What do you mean? We got the answer. What the fuck are you talking about? You heard the screams. Demons are always screaming
In the
in
world
hell.
of UFO research, some self-proclaimed hunters often analyze
It's not the
NASA
drone,
feeds
it was
for proof.
fucking demons, bro.
Unfortunately, for the most part, they're left with blurry pictures of normal space phenomena.
Thanks to
However,
resub
every
Geo
now and then, the cameras pick up something that shouldn't be
Nuka
there.
Ruka in the Prime.
The most recent
Islo
example
and
of
Bread.
this was on February 19th, 2020, when ufologists spotted this bizarre object.
I'm sorry to hear that, Bear. We'll do the Ghost of Camel in just a moment. I'm busy being enlightened. Thanks to resub Crimpy.
Incredibly, based on its size compared to that of the nearby planets, the UFO appears to be massive on an unprecedented scale. Still, despite such inspired speculation, NASA claims the artifact anomaly is actually an internal reflection of Venus. Intriguingly though, researchers have noted the UFO's similarity to Ezekiel's wheel, long suspected to be proof of the ancient alien theory.
Yep, that's what I was thinking too.
The Bible claims the prophet was visited by a flying chariot, yet others believe it was a spaceship. No doubt this sounds like blatant pseudoscience, except the idea was surprisingly correlated by NASA chief Joseph Blumrich. So, is the solar anomaly proof that Ezekiel's wheel has returned? Or was it really just a reflection of Venus?
No, it's Ezekiel's wheel. Like, you can't argue with that. Look at that shit. It's like a fucking Beyblade over there.
If this year didn't feel apocalyptic enough, some believe a dragon has now been filmed in China. In a scene sensationally described as Hell on Earth, a sudden explosion recently hit the Tiexi district of Shenyang. Officially, it was the result of a lightning strike. However, many are convinced it was some type of plasma weapon, and even weirder still, that it had a connection to this flying creature.
Wow. It's always so convenient that someone's like looking in the correct direction to catch something like that in a totally innocent, nothing going on kind of day. I always just find that really lucky, just how lucky we are to get those kind of angles, because he's clearly holding his phone.
Mysteriously,
He just decided to start recording while driving over by those buildings doing nothing.
Like a dragon silhouette behind the apartments. Covered by multiple cameras, skeptics have claimed it's merely a piece of plastic debris, yet it seems to flap its wings.
That was sweet there. No, I think it's
is
just...
it possible
I don't
that
think so.
Anomaly
Boom.
really is some unexplained creature? And if so, why was its appearance perfectly timed with the explosion? Is this proof they're related, or was it just a bunch of debris and a few coincidences? What's your opinion?
I think it's a dragon. I mean, what the fuck else could it be?
A video that bears unnerving similarity to that of the frozen bird clip. This was taken back in September 2019. Posted to Facebook by Morgan Lyons, she supposedly stumbled upon this crowd of seemingly frozen people. This is definitely weird enough, but even stranger, there'd been nobody there 10 minutes earlier.
What the fuck is happening?
Holy shit. The NPCs, their code is fucked up.
Gotta go. Get me out.
Now, this is certainly mysterious, but could there be a simple explanation? According to some comments, the group is a class from Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditation retreat, in which participants stand completely still in order to become fully immersed in the experience. However, others remain skeptical of this, and question why they would freeze in such uncomfortable positions, as well as why some members are stood nowhere near each other. Additionally, viewers state that they couldn't all stand still without at least some instance of movement. So, if the people aren't from the meditation retreat, could it perhaps be an elaborate prank? Or, as a few far-out theories postulate, further evidence of the simulation hypothesis?
I think simulation.
Gotta go. Get me out.
You didn't see one moving. That was an illusion to hide the malfunctioning simulated
Earlier this
universe.
year, the city of Bryan, Texas was rocked by a horde of banshee-like screams, and although officials blamed a pressure release valve, many residents are
Hey, I have
convinced
seen
of
that
an
phase, and thank
otherworldly
you.
explanation. One of these
Thanks
is
for
Daniel
so
Robb,
cool.
who was one of the first to record the screams. According to Robb, they apparently started around 8:30 in the midst of an unusually powerful thunderstorm, and continued for an hour.
There's a sound screaming, it's like a scream. It's so freaking loud, and it's coming from up in the air, like up there. It's been going on now.
Jesus.
What is that? I swear I saw like this thing when the lightning was flashing a second ago. What the fuck?
This one was a real thing? What did it
The
turn out to
screams
be?
come in fairly regular intervals, with an odd mixture of vibration sounds and shrieks. Most inexplicably, they seem to be extremely loud, and yet somehow far in the distance.
That is so loud and so like eerie. It's like a banshee, blood curdling.
So what did it turn out to be then, if it's real?
There it is again.
It's Zapdos? That's kind of what I was thinking.
What is that?
Fortunately, however, resident Rusty Appolida was able to get a much more close-up recording. Unfortunately, his video only makes the screams that much more creepy.
Uh-oh. Oh, is that... Don't... I think it's a fox that makes a
Curiously,
fucking
the
super loud
seemed to
scream, right?
end with an animalistic cry.
Is that a fox or
While
something?
around
What
the
am I
same
thinking of?
time, there are a series of mysterious blue flashes. Eerily, these screams sound like they're coming from something alive, and not
Mountain
an
lion?
object as others speculated.
Thanks to resub, Maddie.
So what was responsible?
True boom, it could be.
For now we don't know, but the answer probably lies in Rob's other two videos. Interestingly, the earlier clip shows the Air Force responding to an unidentified object, in the exact same location where he later captured the screams.
Yes, it was probably an alien spacecraft screaming.
Meanwhile, in the latter piece of footage, it looks as if Rob potentially captured said object.
It's coming from up there. See that thing in the sky? Flashes?
Thanks to resub, Sunbro, Neptune in the Prime, Atrium.
What was this UFO? A weather modification device as has been suggested, or is there a more darker outlook?
That's not a cloud. It's a witch. So what does a mountain lion scream sound like? Well, that almost immediately replicated that. That took the quickest YouTube search of all time. That's pretty fucking close. What does a fox scream sound like? I know these screams are fucking crazy. Nice. This one? Yep, I think it was probably a mountain lion. This is probably filmed on the same night that that guy was losing his fucking mind thinking it was a banshee. Hey, thanks for the 5 tier 2 gift subs, damn right. Appreciate it. Thanks for the resub, Hawk Kid. Thank you, man.
I'm built differently.